Chapter 169. Chu Tian led the 6 of them forward at full speed. The corridor is too long, we won't be able to leave for a while. Yun Xiao shouted as he ran, those fellows won't take this chance to catch up, right? They won't. Chu Tian said with certainty, they will definitely go in another direction. Don't waste time, we need to move faster, otherwise we'll be in big trouble. The 7 of them circulated their spirit energy to the limit and their bodies were covered in a glow of spirit energy. They rushed through the corridor as fast as they could, but they were still too slow. Dong, 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 dong. There was a series of earth-shaking footsteps. An incomparably burly armored giant slowly stood up in front of them. His entire body was covered in pitch-black armor, like a huge iron can. The T-shaped gap of the sealed helmet emitted a bluish-white light, and he held a long-handled hammer in both hands. Nangongyun cried out in shock, there really is such a big person in this world? Feng Kaidai, Yun Xiao, and the others were all stunned. This was too shocking, it simply surpassed the limits of a human's imagination. Who had ever seen a person that was as big as a giant dragon? Even the heaviest ship in Central State City's docks could not compare to this. It was the size of several houses and a single finger was thicker than a person's thigh. Just by standing in front of it, they could feel a suffocating pressure. The giant's body was covered in cold and heavy armor that was at least several hundred tons in weight. If it was melted down, it would be enough to create an army of weapons. How do we fight like this? Yun Xiao loudly shouted, his fart can send us flying into the sky and his but can kill us all. This was not an exaggeration. This giant was over 1,000 tons in weight. If Mount Tai came crashing down, even a 4th awakened soul layer cultivator would not be able to withstand it. Not to mention the fact that the giant itself was very strong. From all 4 sides of the arch, large hands reached out. There were even more giants awakening and this place would soon be surrounded by giant guards. This was the first time Lin Mu, Fang Han, and Feng Kaidai had participated in the trial for the first time. Their faces were all pale at this moment. This was the Central State trial. The difficulty was simply too great. It hadn't even been half an hour since the Mystic Realm had opened, and it was already difficult to survive. It was truly a mystery how some people in the past had managed to survive for more than 100 hours in the Mystic Realm. This was Yun Yao's second time participating in the secret territory. Although this time's difficulty was unusually high, Yun Yao was still relatively calm among the crowd. Everyone, don't panic. It's impossible for a trial like this to leave no room for survival in the first place. Although this giant is very powerful, it's currently very slow. As long as you don't touch it, there's a chance you can avoid it. Indeed. Chu Tian solved the Rubik's Cube lock at a godly speed, and the 7 of them left the cage in time. Even under such circumstances, they still encountered a giant guard holding a giant hammer. The trial wouldn't force people into a dead end right from the start. Then there was only one possibility. The giant hammer giant was an escape test set in the trial. No matter how fast you escaped, you would definitely encounter this giant. The only way to escape was through the giant hammer giant. Trespassing into the forbidden area. Die. A wave of sound waves rolled out. The surrounding walls trembled and the dust on the ground was blown into the air. The visibility was greatly reduced. They could only see an armored giant holding an incomparably thick giant hammer, taking a shocking step forward. A wild energy that could be seen with the naked eye was gathering on the hammer. Everyone felt their chests become heavy as their blood surged. They were simply unable to breathe, but their hearts relaxed. As expected. It wasn't fast enough. Whether it was the ability to move or gather energy, it was very slow. This meant that they had enough time to react. Wild lightning gathered in the Thunder Spirit Bead. The Thunder Spirit Bead turned into a giant bolt of lightning that slammed into the giant's head. Sparks flew and even the helmet began to melt. Nangongyun was filled with joy, its head has exploded. It's dead. Yun Yao was truly worthy of being in the 4th awakened soul layer. Her destructive power was not something the other 6 could compare to. The Thunder Source Spirit's destructive power was very strong, and adding in the Thunder Spirit Bead's effect, the destructive power of her attack was even stronger than Luo Xianglong and Yi Tianlang's full-strength attacks. The giant was hit by this fierce attack and was forced back a few steps, but it did not fall. Chu Tian's pupils suddenly shrank. This isn't right. Be careful. Half of the armored giant's head had been blown to pieces, but it seemed like nothing had happened. The giant hammer continued to fall and hit the ground in front of it. A terrifying shockwave was released. The entire floor began to crack. That terrifying shockwave covered the sky and swallowed the 7 of them. Chu Tian and Nangong Yun's starlight crystals began to crack, almost completely shattering. Feng Kaidai, Yun Xiao, Lin Mu, and Fang Han all spat out blood from the shockwave. Yun Yao's cultivation was deep, but she had used her spirit energy to attack, so she was caught off guard and was injured. This fellow was too strong. Although the hammer had missed, just the shockwave alone had almost killed them. Yun Xiao climbed up with great difficulty, but his bones felt like they were about to fall apart. He couldn't help thinking, if his elder sister had not forced the giant back a step and the giant hammer had smashed down, what would have happened? Just the shockwave alone would have been enough to kill half of the people here. This cold and silent armored giant slowly raised the giant hammer again. A pair of emotionless eyes stared at the tiny humans as the part of its head that had been hit by the Thunder Spirit Bead began to heal. It seemed like it did not care about this bit of damage at all. That surging energy began to condense. Quickly run. How could they not run? This fellow's skin was very thick. Even Yun Yao could not do anything to it. The others might not even be able to break through its defense. The 7 of them passed through the giant's feet and quickly escaped from the giant's side. It was a good thing that the giant was very slow, so it condensed energy very slowly. When the giants slowly turned around, the 7 of them had already run over 20 feet away. Hong! The heaven-shaking giant hammer slammed down once again. An incomparably strong shockwave was sent out. Fuck! How can we live? This trial is too abnormal. The shockwave caught up in an instant, and a violent thrust came from behind. The 7 of them were like insects in a gale, and they were instantly blown high into the air. After crossing a distance of several dozen meters, they fell in a mess in the corridor. Because they were far away, the shockwave still caused quite a bit of damage. The armored giant silently raised the giant hammer. It was like an ice-cold killing machine, without pity or emotion. If one attack didn't kill them, then it would attack twice. If 2 attacks didn't kill them, then it would attack 3 times, until they died. The meaning of its existence, it was like this. It's chasing us again. Quickly run. The 7 of them continued to run. The armored giant raised the giant hammer and chased after them. Every time the giant hammer fell, it meant that a terrifying storm would erupt. The 7 of them were blown away again and again, but they quickly crawled back up and continued to run. This won't do. We'll be caught. My bones are broken, I can't run anymore. Chu Tian picked up Yun Xiao, who had a broken leg, and continued to run, but running like this was not a solution. There were already several people who were heavily injured, so it was impossible for them to block the giant's attacks. A light flashed in his eyes. Fang Han, freeze the ground. Fang Han revealed a look of understanding. He released his ice giant source spirit, and wherever it went, a thick and smooth layer of ice would form on the ground. The giant carrying the sledgehammer caught up, but when his iron boots stepped on the solid ice, he immediately lost his balance, and fell to the ground with a loud bang, as if a mountain of gold and jade had been toppled over. This is a good chance. Quickly, quickly, quickly run. This was bullying the giant's low intelligence. Chu Tian could only think of this method. In terms of destructive might, it was already close to the true soul realm. Every time it released a shockwave, the 7 of them would be in a sorry state. If they were hit by this hammer, they would be instantly wiped out. No matter how heaven-defying Chu Tian's knowledge was, there was nothing he could do against such a giant wearing a lump of iron, especially in the case of a battle. Feng Han ran while creating a smooth mirror of ice on the ground. Before the giant could even take 2 steps, it fell down again. After falling down a few times, the 7 of them had already disappeared without a trace. Damn, we've escaped with our lives. Yun Shao held onto a pillar and spat out a large mouthful of blood on the ground. He began to violently cough. It hurts so much, my lungs might have already been broken into pieces. Feng Katie's jade face was also pale. She covered her mouth as she coughed and blood flowed out from between her fingers. It was clear that she had suffered a heavy internal injury. Lin Mu and Feng Han were not any better than Yun Shao, they did not even have the strength to run. Yun Yao revealed a serious frown. This year's trial is much harder than last year's. Only Yun Yao, who had a high cultivation base, and Nangong Yun and Chu Tian, who had a strong defense, had not suffered any serious injuries. This was all because they had been lucky. This giant looked stupid, slow, and rigid, otherwise no one would have been able to walk out alive. With my current condition, I'm afraid I can't walk anymore. Feng Kaidai clutched her chest and revealed a painful expression. I don't want to drag you down, don't worry about me. Chu Tian knit his brows. This was not good. The problem was that they had all suffered serious internal injuries, so it was impossible for them to escape from the fierce pursuit. The most terrifying thing was that the trial had just begun. When they met the giant again, they would be even faster and have higher intelligence. They would even have martial arts and cultivation techniques. With several heavily injured people, how could they continue? Chu Tian took out the jade bottle from his chest. This was the life bottle from the ancient tomb and it could automatically store life essence water. It could quickly heal their injuries, but there were too many injured people and a single bottle of life essence water was not enough. Yun Shao said with a bitter expression, I don't want to play anymore. This is not a place for people to stay. Old sister, elder sister, boss, you 3 don't need to care about me. You can walk by yourselves. Yun Yao gave a bitter laugh. This couldn't be blamed on him. It was because this trial was too abnormal. Lin Mu suddenly said, I have a way to heal myself. Stand by my side. Feng Han walked to Lin Mu's side first. Yun Shao and Feng Kaidai were stunned for a few seconds before they took the initiative to stand by him. Lin Mu suddenly released his spirit energy and a giant willow tree grew from behind him. There was a green light that was like a drizzle that covered the injured people. An incredible scene occurred. The 4 of them felt their injuries quickly turn for the better. Lin Mu's willow tree source spirit went from being filled with vitality to quickly withering away. After the 4 of them were healed, the entire willow tree became dry and bare. Yun Shao said in a surprised voice, Old brother. You're not bad. This source spirit can even heal injuries. It's not healing, it's just absorbing damage. Lin Mu had consumed a lot of spirit energy and his head was covered in sweat. As he stood on the bare willow tree, he gave a bitter smile and said, My source spirit has been temporarily crippled, so I won't be able to use it for 4 hours. Everyone, try not to get injured during this time. They couldn't be injured for 4 hours. This would be very hard to achieve. A furry little head popped out from Chu Tian's clothes. It pointed to the left with a claw and let out a warning sound. There's a situation. A large group of black things surged out from the inside. Looking over, there were around 50-80 of them. These fellows were not large giants, but each of them was more than 3 meters tall, more than 3 times the size of a human. They only wore a pair of shorts and were bare-chested. In their hands were hammers, long blades, and other weapons. Some of them were even holding crossbows. They aggressively pounced on the group of people. It's a cyclops. There were too many of these strange people, it was simply a small army. They moved very quickly, like hungry wolves charging at their prey. Chapter 170. These one-eyed humanoid monsters had reddish-brown skin that had a rough, rock-like texture. Their muscles were tight and they were incomparably strong. Their lower bodies were covered in an apron-like metal armor and their large feet only had 3 toes. Most of them had weapons in their hands. In the era that Chu Tian lived in, these creatures had been extinct for over 10,000 years. Cyclopes, also known as cave dwellers, were half intelligent and half wild beasts. Their intelligence was very low, but they had a special ability. Because of their cruel nature, their attacks were very strong. Chu Tian shouted, "Be careful of their eyes." It was too late, the Cyclops' eyes released a strong cold glow. Nangong Yun and Yunyao were prepared to fight back, but they were suddenly hit by this cold light. They felt a spiritual energy enter their brains, making their bodies turn stiff. It was like they were petrified, unable to move. This is bad. I can't move. This was a kind of innate skill of the Cyclopes. They could release a numbing light, but this numbing effect did not come from their body. It used spiritual energy to numb their limbs, making them lose control of their body. However, this spiritual energy was transmitted through the light. If they closed their eyes and didn't look at the light, they wouldn't be numbed. There was no other way. They could only fight. The little fox spat out a scarlet-red needle that pierced through the Cyclopes' heads, killing one of them on the spot. The netherworld sword was covered in blue and white flames as it suddenly turned into a burning sword glow that stabbed at the Cyclops. It immediately cut off one of the Cyclops' heads. There were many Cyclopes, but their strength was average. They had the destructive power of a triple awakened soul. Because they didn't have any cultivation techniques, they could only fight with their innate skills, so their battle strength wasn't that strong. So, a Cyclopes shot an arrow at him. Dang! This strong arrow hit Chu Tian's shoulder, forcing Chu Tian out of his invisible state. The Cyclopes' eyes were very special. Not only could they release special attacks, they could also see through illusion techniques. With Chu Tian's cultivation, it was hard for him to hide from the Cyclopes' eyes. It was a good thing he had the Starlight Immortal body. Otherwise Chu Tian would have been heavily injured. 2 more Cyclopes charged at him, and Chu Tian quickly raised his sword to block them. The moment he swung his hammer down, the ground around him caved in. Fortunately, it wasn't an ordinary weapon. Otherwise, the 2 hammers would have broken it. Get lost! The demon god's sword source spirit soared into the sky and the ferocious aura forced the giants back 2 steps. The sword glow increased by several times and it slashed out in a circle, sending 2 Cyclopes' heads flying. Nangong Yun and Yunyao gradually regained their senses. Let's go together. Nangong Yun relied on the Starlight Immortal body and closed her eyes as she charged forward. She was like an angry fireball as she knocked over 3-4 Cyclopes. She lifted a 2-ton Cyclopes with both hands and threw them several meters away, creating a large hole in the ground. Yunyao and Feng Katie's attacks were far away, so they covered the 2 of them from afar. Yun Xiao, Lin Mu, and Feng Han were the weaker ones, so they did not dare charge forward to fight the fierce Cyclopes. They could only guard Yun Xiao and Feng Katie's side, blocking the Cyclopes' arrows for them. When a Cyclopes managed to escape, the 3 of them would charge forward to take care of them. The 7 of them fought against 10 times the number of Cyclopes. Although they fought with all their strength, they still managed to hold on. At this time, from the tunnel in front of them came the roars of Cyclopes. Several dozen Cyclopes charged forward like hungry wolves, preparing to join the battle. Nangong Yun knocked down a Cyclops and sat on its body, smashing its head into mush. A gust of wind blew as a hammer smashed into Nangong Yun's back. The starlight glass shattered and Nangong Yun was sent flying several meters away. 4-5 Cyclopes charged forward, but large amounts of sword chi and lightning shot out, causing the Cyclopes to cry out. Nangong Yun took this chance to jump up. The Starlight Immortal body had mostly recovered and she kicked out, sending a Cyclope's head flying into its chest. We can't kill them all. There are too many. When she saw the Cyclopes' reinforcements arrive, she revealed a helpless look. These Cyclopes were too strong and the 7 of them had a hard time dealing with 10 times their numbers. Now that a large group had appeared, how could they deal with them? But there was no way out. The left and right sides were surrounded by Cyclopes and they couldn't go through the back corridor. There were giant guards there and each one was 100 times stronger than the Cyclopes. Gee. The little fox stood up and with a leap, it turned into a gray mist in the air, suddenly disappearing without a trace. Almost at the same time, the little fox appeared in front of the Cyclopes that had come to support them. Its 4 claws were on the head of the Cyclopes. The Cyclopes gave a wild roar as it slapped the little fox. In the end, it slapped its face and knocked itself to the ground. The little fox had already turned into a gray mist and disappeared. It appeared on the face of the second Cyclopes and used its claws to stab at its eye. Ayo! The Cyclopes were enraged and slammed their hammers at it. Paw! Blood flowed from their heads. Another Cyclopes knocked itself to the ground. The little fox used a strange movement technique and teased all of the Cyclopes. This time the Cyclopes were all enraged and they all stood up with blood flowing from their heads. They raised their weapons and chased after the little fox. Gee. The little fox brought the large group of Cyclopes and danced around in the open area while waving its hands at Chu Tian, telling Chu Tian to hurry up. Chu Tian laughed, "Little fellow, you're quite something. Help me hold on for a minute." The others never thought that a normal little fox would be able to stall several Cyclopes at this critical moment, giving the 7 of them precious time to catch their breath. It was all thanks to the Cyclopes' low intelligence and wild temperament, otherwise anyone with a bit of a brain would not have been attracted by this little thing. Chu Tian and Nangong Yun charged through the Cyclopes. Feng Kaidai and Yun Yao attacked from afar while Yun Zhao's group of 3 supported them. The Cyclopes fell to the ground one by one and the pressure on them was greatly reduced. They worked together to take care of the remaining Cyclopes. At this time, the Cyclopes that were dancing with the little fox were already bleeding from their heads and heavily injured. What made them not know whether to laugh or cry was that these injuries were caused by each other and some were caused by themselves. Let's go. After a few more rounds of attacks, the Cyclopes were all lying on the ground. Eliminate the giant laborer team. You have been awarded 3 trial points. You currently have 148 trial points. Eliminate the giant laborer team. You have been awarded 2 trial points. You currently have 150 trial points. On the trial necklaces on everyone's chests, the glowing numbers began to move and they all increased by a few points. The 2 Cyclopes were completely eliminated. Chu Tian obtained 5 trial points, Nangong Yun obtained 4, Yun Yao and Feng Kaidai each obtained 3, and Yun Zhao's group of 3 each obtained 2 points. Stingy. A magic cube still gave 20 points. Of course, to the trial designer, the difficulty of solving a Rubik's Cube was probably much higher than defeating an armored giant. One's actions and performance in this trial could be rewarded and the rewards were directly linked to the difficulty. Yun Xiao suddenly said in a surprised voice, "Look! The Cyclopes' corpses have disappeared." The Cyclopes on the ground became transparent one by one, and all of them disappeared without a trace. This was not strange at all. In this trial space, it was impossible for everything to be real. It was a combination of illusion and matter. The Cyclopes and the giant guards were all simulated by the trial's illusion array. They seem to have left something behind. Yun Xiao walked over to where the Cyclopes had disappeared and picked up a bronze key. There's also one here. Nangong Yun was in the middle of the second wave of Cyclopes and she also picked up a bronze key. Yun Yao was not surprised and explained, "It's just spoils of war. After a battle in the trial space, there is a chance of obtaining spoils of war. It could be elixirs, weapons, or even items that can be used in the trial space." "What use does this key have?" There will be treasure chests in the trial space and the key can open the treasure chest of the corresponding quality. Nan Gongyun held the key with a curious expression. This sounded a bit interesting. She never thought that the trial tower designer would have a talent for entertainment. We can't stay here for long, let's quickly leave. There were two paths to choose from. One was the place where large amounts of giant laborer appeared and the other was a place where they did not know the situation at all. After a simple discussion, they decided that they should go to the passage where the Cyclopes appeared. The Cyclopes were very fierce, but it was not impossible to fight against them. The Cyclopes were called giant laborer in the trial space, so in this trial space, the Cyclopes were the lowest level monsters. There was no safe place in the trial space and there were too many unknown paths, so it was better to go to the giant laborer's nest. After walking through the long corridor, a giant palace appeared in front of them. The size of this palace was around the same as the central state city square. There were all kinds of stones and wood scattered all over the ground. There were several hundred Cyclopes currently moving materials to the center, as if they were building a tower. The tower was already half completed. When Chu Tian looked over, he suddenly revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Starlight stones. There are actually several large pieces of starlight stones embedded in the top of the tower. Nan Gongyun noticed that there were several gems at the top of the tower that were glowing with starlight. Nan Gongyun was very familiar with this kind of starlight energy because it could be extracted from meteor grass. Only, the starlight energy extracted from the meteor grass was very weak. This starlight stone's starlight energy is equivalent to 100,000 pieces of meteor grass. Chu Tian's eyes lit up. This thing can allow our starlight immortal body to evolve from the small success glass body to the diamond body. Nan Gongyun's body trembled. If it was like this, then these gems were priceless treasures to them. Even if they did not obtain anything from this trial, just these starlight stones would make this trip worth it. Chapter 171. Several hundred giant laborers were wearing apron-like armor, carrying large pieces of fine iron and wood. Some were breaking stones, some were chopping wood, and some were hammering against each other. It was bustling with activity, completely not noticing the intruder that was sneaking into the main hall. The copper lamp was dim and the starlight stone was suspended high in the tower, but it was enough to illuminate the entire main hall. There were many giant laborers here and it would be very troublesome if they fought, so they had to be careful when taking the starlight stone. The little fox volunteered itself to ask Chu Tian for help. Chu Tian was skeptical. You can do it. The little fox proudly raised its head. To this smart fox, this was a piece of cake. Then its sparkling eyes flashed a few times and it rubbed its claws a few times. Then it pointed at its mouth, revealing a look of anticipation. Nan Gongyun could not understand at all. What is it saying? It's almost finished eating. It's saying that if we do this, we'll give it more. It even knew how to discuss conditions with its master. The little fox's intelligence was very incredible. Relax. Chu Tian rubbed the little fellow's furry head. When have I mistreated you? The little fox rolled its eyes like a human. Yun Xiao said from the side, Boss, it seems like you're not good to it normally. Bullshit. Chu Tian turned his head to look at him. Do you think this little thing is easy to raise? Father's savings have all been eaten by it. They had brought back a large amount of corpse cores from the 10,000 corpse ancient tomb, but what was the result? There were only 2 left. There was no lack of corpse cores from a 1,000-year-old corpse monster. That was a terrifying existence that surpassed the awakened soul realm. A single corpse monster's corpse core was very expensive, and other than the ones that were given to the Flame Ghost brothers, the rest had all entered this fellow's stomach. Who knew what kind of creature this fellow was? No matter what it ate, it only ate and didn't poop. Chu Tian tapped the little fox's head. Quickly go. The little fox let out 2 woo sounds and suddenly jumped out. It turned into a gray fog and disappeared from Chu Tian's hand. It instantly traveled 100 meters and landed on the ground. With another jump, it turned into a gray fog and traveled another 100 meters. Yun Yao and the others were shocked. It's simply teleportation. Its battle strength isn't that great, but its movement technique is very strong. What was the use of the little fox? Chu Tian was confused. The little fox's battle strength was close to zero. Other than picking up a needle and launching sneak attacks, it had no battle value at all. However, the little fox's perception was very strong. There were many fluctuations and energies that even Chu Tian couldn't sense, but the little fox could sense them in time. Other than that, although the little fox was born with an extremely mean and evil nature, it was the nemesis of evil and demons. When he fought with demonic cultivators, because it could restrain demonic arts, it was of some help to Chu Tian. The little fox stared at the laborer's big round eye. The laborer had just been carrying a piece of iron, so how could he have expected to encounter such a sinister sneak attack? He cried out and subconsciously covered his eyes. When he loosened his grip, the falling piece of iron smashed into his feet. He jumped up and down in pain, and his comical appearance was like he was dancing. The second, the third, the fourth, the little fox aimed at their eyes and passed by several cyclopes in a short period of time. Each person was hit and the several cyclopes all cried out. Roar, roar, roar. How could these violent cyclopes tolerate such an arrogant little fellow? They all put down what they were doing and angrily gathered. The little fox saw that the situation was bad and ran away. Then, several hundred large and strong humanoid monsters formed a long line. They held giant hammers and large blades in their hands as they charged forward with killing intent. They were chasing after a little fox that was not even as big as a rabbit. The little fox ran away while waving its claws at Chu Tian. The giants have been led away. Let's go. Chu Tian jumped onto the high tower to grab the starlight stones. Not bad, there were 6 or 7 of them, easily obtaining them. He never thought that it would be this smooth. Let's quickly escape. At this time, an angry roar rang out. Their expressions changed. What? There are still fish that escaped the net. From behind the high tower, 2 cold beams of light shot out. Nangong Yun and Chu Tian quickly dodged and 2 large holes appeared in the ground. 2 cyclopes that stood out from the rest rushed out. Their bodies were clearly more muscular, and they wore very thick armor. Their weapons and equipment were also of superior quality. Both of them had thick and long wolf fang meteor hammers. Yun Shao knit his brows and said, such a strong aura. They should be at the illustrious soul realm. Their realms are definitely higher than mine. Roar. Their skin turned scarlet red like they were using a wild cultivation technique. With a stomp of their right feet, the ground caved in and they turned into a blur as they charged forward. Their speed did not match their large bodies at all. So fast. We can't run away. Yun Yao's thunder spirit bead flashed and electricity surged around her, surrounding her in defense. The cyclopes touched the electricity and were immediately blown away. When Chu Tian raised his sword to attack, a meteor hammer flew over. That meteor hammer was also covered in a scarlet-red glow. Just like a powerful artillery shell, it slammed into Chu Tian's body. Hong! The air shook. Before the meteor hammer hit Chu Tian, a visible shockwave sent Chu Tian flying. Not to mention other people, even Yun Yao at the 4th awakened soul layer could not block this kind of attack. The netherworld sword absorbed a portion of the damage, but most of it still landed. Chu Tian's starlight glaze was shattered inch by inch. He felt like several of his bones had been broken. He was sent flying and rolled a dozen meters away. He was in an extremely sorry state. Are you all right? I won't die. Be careful. Chu Tian clutched his chest as he stood up. They are using shockwave attacks. Yun Yao used the thunder spirit bead to block them 10 meters away. Don't let any attacks get within 10 meters of you. It's over if you're hit. The might of the 2 cyclopes could instantly kill anyone here. Chu Tian was lucky that he was not killed, otherwise he would have been kicked out of the trial tower. You guys support me. Yunyao had the highest cultivation and the strongest battle strength here. This kind of illustrious soul realm monster, of course she had to make a move, otherwise Nangong Yun would not be able to do it. Nangong Yun and Chu Tian would deal with the triple awakened soul target. No matter how strong this target was, they were confident they could fight it. The fourth awakened soul layer and the triple awakened soul, on the surface there was only a single level difference, but the difference was like heaven and earth. Lightning. Yunyao called out 10,000 streaks of purple lightning. The other Cyclopes waved the meteor hammer, and when it was about to attack them, Yunyao suddenly threw the thunder spirit bead high into the air and slammed her palm onto the thunder spirit bead. The bead was filled with powerful lightning and it shot out like a meteor. Hong! The thunder spirit bead and the meteor hammer collided. A purple electric current flowed through the chains of the meteor hammer and directly entered the Cyclope's body. A terrifying wave of lightning was released and the Cyclope's body exploded, flying several meters away. Yunyao's cultivation talent was not weak and she had been trained by the Yun family for a long time, so there were few people who could match her in the same realm. Adding in the thunder spirit bead's power, this attack was enough to heavily injure the Cyclopes. The other Cyclopes counterattacked. Lin Mu and Fang Han made a move at the same time. One summoned a tree root from the ground and quickly bound the Cyclopes, while the other summoned a cold wave to freeze the Cyclope's body. Although their cultivations were too high and it was impossible to control them, they could still restrain them for a while. Nangong Yun took this chance to charge forward and kick the Cyclope's chest armor to pieces. The Cyclopes flew out like a ball. Yunyao took this chance to call back the thunder spirit bead. Gathering her strength, she circled around her and shot it at the Cyclopes again. Another Cyclopes fell to the ground. This time the two Cyclopes were heavily injured. The Cyclopes had strong attacks, but their defenses were weak. The Thunder Spirit Bead was a soul-contracting weapon like the Netherworld Sword, so it was very strong in the hands of the Purple Lightning young Master Yunyao. After two heavy attacks, their battle strength was greatly reduced. Kill! The few of them took the opportunity to charge forward and finally successfully killed the two powerful monsters. Chu Tian used his sword to support his body and took out a jade bottle from his chest. Drinking half a bottle of life essence water, his wounds quickly healed and he was no longer in danger. We've received a notification from the trial jade token. This monster is called a laborer supervisor, it should be the leader of these laborers. Is that so? Damn, no wonder it's so strong. Father's waist was almost broken. When the two laborer supervisors' corpses disappeared, there was a scroll left behind by one of them. It was another spoil of war. Several people picked it up and saw that it was a map. The Giant's Labyrinth map. Everyone's spirits were shaken. The Giant's Labyrinth had been completely mapped out. Looking at the map, the Giant's Labyrinth was very complex. There were around 100 to 200 corridors with many forks in between. There were 80 to 90 halls and they were all clearly marked on the map. Nangong Yun flipped the map around a few times. What kind of words are these? I don't understand them at all. Map? Let me see it. Chu Tian looked at the map a few times. It's the ancient heaven race's language, of course an uncultured person like you wouldn't understand it. If anyone else said Nangong Yun was uncultured, she would have broken their nose without saying a word. But when it came from Chu Tian's mouth, she didn't have any temper at all. What is the heaven race? It was a very, 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 very ancient race. When the Tian race ruled the continent, there weren't even any elves, not to mention the spirit beasts. As for the humans, I think they were in some barren cave in a barren land, dancing around a bonfire naked. The heaven race was a legendary race. It was said that the heaven race were the descendants of the great ancient era, the survivors of the great ancient continent. They controlled a part of the great ancient civilization, but most of it was not passed down, so it was a pity. You're saying that this trial tower is related to the heaven race? Not necessarily. The heaven race is too ancient and there aren't many things from that era that can be preserved until now. This trial tower is clearly aimed at young people, so it isn't some high-level trial tower for the heaven race. It's possible that a later race dug out the fragments of the Heaven Race's trial tower and the low-level trial blueprints. Then they spent a large amount of manpower to restore it. That's not important. Nan Gongyun asked, then quickly look at the map. Where should we go to be safer? We've been in the trial tower for 2-3 hours, the monsters should be getting stronger by now. If this continues, we won't even be able to beat the laborers. That was also true. When Chu Tian was about to look at the map, an angry roar came from the other side of the passage. What is that fellow doing? He actually came back. We still haven't left yet. Yun Shao looked around and was instantly stunned. It's over, this palace is a dead end. We'll definitely be discovered this time. The little fox charged into the main hall and was chased around in a very sorry state. This was strange. Wasn't it able to easily deal with these laborers? Why was it in such a sorry state now? When the 7 of them looked over, they all revealed an expression like they had seen a ghost. The appearance of the hundreds of slaves changed greatly when they left. Originally, they were only wearing trousers and skirts, but now, they were all wearing fine leather armor. They held shields and big bows in their hands, just like a regular army that had just begun to take shape. The meteor hammer, pumpkin hammer, large blade, halberd, and bows were all aimed at the little fox. Rocks flew everywhere, and if it wasn't for the little fox's speed, it would have already been smashed to pieces. Damn it! They had all become supervisors. These idiots had been laborers a few minutes ago, but after being brought out by the little fox, they had all gone from laborers to foremen. Even a promotion couldn't be this fast, right? Then again, even if they were promoted, didn't they still need someone to do the work? How could they turn laborers into foremen? This didn't make any sense at all. Chu Tian did not have time to complain about the strange evolution of the trial space's designer. There were 400-500 laborers that had become supervisors and were charging forward. If each one was as strong as the 2 they had just met, then what was the point of fighting? The palace only had one exit. There was nowhere to run. Wait a minute. Chu Tian looked at his current position on the map and immediately found some clues. There is a dotted line on the back of the main hall. Dotted line. Why isn't it solid? This means it is a secret passage. Quickly find it. Chapter 172. Even if the monsters in the trial space became stronger, it should be a gradual process. It was like these laborers had eaten aphrodisiac, instantly increasing their strength. Who could endure this? Could it be that this was the price of stealing the Starlight Stone? The Starlight Stone was a very precious material, and the more precious it was, the greater the price one had to pay. So the trial space automatically made it so that as long as the Starlight Stone was taken, the laborers would level up? No matter what the reason was, it was not important. These laborers had broken through the triple awakened soul layer and were close to the illustrious soul realm of the 4th awakened soul layer. Moreover, they had basic martial arts and cultivation techniques, so their battle strength could not be compared to before. The 400-500 Cyclopes were all very strong. They were around 4 meters tall and weighed 1 to 2 tons. They were like a large group of war chariots, with an aura that did not lose to a human army of several tens of thousands. If they were surrounded, they would not be able to escape. Nan Gongyun shouted in a pleasantly surprised voice, "I found it." On the wall of the main hall, there was a very large rectangular golden book. It was like a piece of steel embedded in the wall, and it was hard to see from afar. But from a close distance, one could see that there was a gap in the thick metal. So it should be a door. Nan Gongyun gathered her strength and slammed into it. In the end, the door did not open and she was sent flying. Stupid, you can't open it with brute force. This is a secret locked door. Chu Tian walked over and searched for a bit. He immediately found several small squares that could be moved, and each square had a very complex rune engraved on it, a jigsaw puzzle. Cover me. Feng Kaidai looked at the aggressive group of Cyclopes. I'm afraid it's too late. 10 seconds is enough. Chu Tian used his spirit energy to control the metal squares and quickly moved them up and down. The rules to open the door were very simple. As long as he moved the squares a certain number of times and made them form a correct source energy array, he could open the door. The rules were very simple. But it was very hard to do. First of all, no one knew what the original diagram looked like. Even if it was a jigsaw puzzle, shouldn't they at least use the original diagram as a reference? There was no reference here, and compared to a picture, the densely packed runes and diagrams were much more complicated, making it impossible to find any pattern. The worst part was that this puzzle had a limited number of moves. If the number of moves exceeded the limit, then the squares would be messed up again, forcing the player to start all over again. If this map was placed in the central state city Yun Sect, it would take at least 10 days to half a month to complete it. Not only did Chu Tian have to complete it in a short period of time, but he also had to face the threat of a large group of laborers. Is this a magic show? How was this possible? The large group of giant laborers was only a few dozen feet away from the secret door. Some of them even pulled their bows and shot out powerful arrows. Block it! Nangong Yun's dense spirit energy transformed into a fist wind that deflected the arrow. A bolt of purple lightning soared into the sky. The thunder spirit bead turned into a blur as it quickly flew around, releasing hundreds of bolts of lightning that weaved into a dense net of lightning. When the giants in front wanted to approach, they were sent flying by the lightning. Wind Cloud Sword Song. Feng Kaidai called out several dozen streaks of sword chi. Like a blue wave, they charged at the laborers. They used all their strength to block it, but the monsters were too big and they were all very fierce. They could not withstand the fierce impact at all. It seemed like it was only a matter of time before they started fighting. Once the Cyclops came within 30 feet of them, they would be able to kill everyone in an instant. Chu Tian was completely focused on the secret door. Everything seemed to have nothing to do with him. The runes and arrays on the square seemed to gradually come to life. They all peeled off from the metal plate and floated in the air. They connected with each other and formed a complete circle. Shwa, 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 shwa. Chu Tian continued to move the squares, piecing them together one by one. A complex yet complete circle was slowly formed. When Chu Tian moved the last square, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. A soft sound rang out. The entire source energy array began to glow. Countless runes quickly spread out, gradually connecting with the giant door. Finally, with the sound of a mechanism being activated, with a ka sound, a crack appeared on the metal door. A voice sounded in his mind. The secret puppet door has been successfully opened. You have obtained 20 trial points. You currently have 170 trial points. The door is open. Yun Xiao, Lin Mu, and Fang Han immediately retreated and slowly pushed open the giant door. Chu Tian turned around and shouted, "Let's go." The 7 of them retreated behind the giant door. Countless laborers charged forward, preparing to break open the secret door. The heavenly thunder spirit bead released a glow and countless arcs of lightning shot out, forcing the laborers back. Yun Xiao, Lin Mu, and Fang Han used all their strength to push open the incomparably heavy metal door, once again closing it. It was truly a close shave. The little fox crawled back onto Chu Tian's shoulder and licked its claws, revealing an embarrassed look. "It's been hard on you." Chu Tian rubbed the little fellow's head. "You've done another great merit." The little fox nodded in satisfaction. It had not wasted its energy. Yun Xiao was very serious. The monsters in the trial field have already begun to strengthen. If this continues, we won't be able to hold on for long. Surviving for 3 days and 3 nights is too hard. Everyone had depressed looks on their faces. The trial space could be open for 3 days and only 3 hours had passed. If the monsters continued to strengthen, wouldn't the laborers be able to fly in 2-3 days? There was no need to mention the other strong monsters. Those several dozen meter tall giant guards, after 3 days, they would be as light as swallows and would be incomparably strong. The designer of this secret realm really has no brains. Nangong Yun was very angry. This trial tower only allows awakened soul cultivators under 30 years old to enter. I don't believe that the ancient people who entered the secret realm were all true soul realm experts. Even if there were true soul realm experts, it would be hard for them to survive in this kind of environment. Those giants are not inferior to true soul realm experts at the start, so after several hours, they would have grown wings and flown. You're all wrong. Chu Tian said, the difficulty of this secret realm is based on the strength of the participants. The Central State 4 young masters are stronger than any of the previous Central State City trials, so they have increased the difficulty of the trial. In other words, even if 10 true soul realm experts came in, they would not be as relaxed as us. They would encounter more trouble, otherwise the trial would lose its meaning. What should we do now? If we stay here without moving, the trial space will summon even more monsters, so we need to move. Chu Tian carefully looked at the map a few times. Strange. What's wrong? Chu Tian showed the map to everyone. The secret passage is a dotted line that leads to a place. There is no terrain marked and there is no name written on it. Does this mean it's a hidden map? Who cares, there's no turning back anyways. Chu Tian put away the map and they walked into the long corridor. Hung. The surroundings began to shake. Yun Xiao looked at the two sides of the corridor and immediately began to curse, fuck. It's another passage filled with giant guards. This giant corridor was exactly the same as the one in the giant's labyrinth. On the left and right sides, there were many arched spaces and each space had an incomparably large giant sealed inside. Once a person approached, the giant guards would awaken. The speed at which the giant guards awakened in this corridor was much faster than in the first corridor. Run! This thing was not a joke. The might of a single one was enough to wipe out the entire team. Other than running, there was no other choice. The 7 of them began to run, running as fast as they could. The corridor began to violently shake. Large amounts of stone fragments fell from left and right. When the 7 of them ran to the center, the giant guards at the front came out. They were 50 meters tall and had large majestic bodies. The aura they gave off made people's hair stand on end, making their hearts tremble. Fuck! They're awake. Hurry up! Behind the 7 of them, one giant after another stood out and chased after them with earth-shattering strides. Although the 7 of them had already run more than half the distance in the corridor, this group of giants was much faster than the one that blocked their way before. With a single step, they could cross a long distance. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before they caught up. Chu Tian quickly gave the order, release the ice. Release the ice. Feng Han ran at the back of the team. He released his ice giant source spirit and a white mist of spirit energy was released onto the ground. Wherever Feng Han ran, the ground was covered in a thick layer of ice that was as hard as iron. 5, 10, 20. More and more giants were awakening in the corridor. Under the full force of the 7 of them, Yun Xiao and the others with weaker cultivations were already beginning to feel tired. But at this critical moment, a giant door suddenly opened in front of them. The door was lit up and it seemed like it was a passage. We're finally here. Yun Yao, Kaidai, go in first. Close the door. This corridor was not long for the giants, but it was a completely different concept for humans. The 7 of them wildly ran for over 10 minutes before finally finding the exit. Feng Kaidai and Yun Yao were the fastest, so they rushed in before the other 5. Then they used all their strength to slowly close the giant metal door. The moment the thick metal door was about to close, the other 5 arrived at the same time. They jumped out at the same time and entered the gap. Dong, dong. Several muffled sounds came from the giant door. The entire space shook as the giants pounded on the giant door. But the lucky thing was that this door was very strong. Once it was closed, even the strongest giant would not be able to break it. The 7 of them almost collapsed. Chu Tian finally realized a fact. Actually, the greatest taboo in the trial was internal strife. The trial was set according to the team's overall strength, so the participants had to work together to have a chance of passing the trial. Chu Xinghe's group of 3 was filled with hatred, causing the 10-man team to split up. Chu Tian's group of 7 was even weaker, so it was very difficult for them to move forward. We're finally safe. The problem is, where is this place? Everyone stared at the space in front of them. The passage seemed to have been cut off in front of them, so what appeared in front of them was a bottomless abyss. It was pitch black and they couldn't see the bottom. They couldn't help feeling a chill in their hearts. Quickly look at the map. Chu Tian opened the map and walked through the hidden passage. There was no mark on the map, but now an archipelago of terrain appeared. There were a few words written in the Heaven race language, Giant Hive. Giant Hive? What is this? Lin Mu shouted, there's a stone bridge in front of us. Everyone looked over and was dumbfounded. This was a stone bridge that spanned across the void. The entire world was pitch black, empty, and desolate. This bridge seemed to pass through the boundless outer space, giving off a strange feeling of loneliness, as well as a sense of insecurity. Chapter 173. It was impossible to predict what was on the other side of the stone bridge. There were some roads that they knew were dangerous, but they couldn't not walk because there was no other way. We can't turn back, I don't want to be smashed into a meat patty by those giants. Nangong Yun was not afraid of challenges, so she volunteered to step onto the bridge. Let's go. I'll lead the way. Wait. Chu Tian stood in front of the bridge and looked over it. There is a problem with this bridge, you'll have an accident if you walk around like this. The armored giant with boundless power and the Cyclops that evolved at an extremely fast speed. Forget about that. But now there was a problem with a bridge. How could they not let others have fun? If Chu Tian said there was a problem, then there must be a problem. Everyone stopped to look. The stone bridge was very narrow in the void, but to a human's eyes, it was very wide. It was 10 meters wide and the floor was covered in exquisite crystal stones. Each crystal stone was engraved with a source energy array that was releasing strong waves of spirit energy. Lin Mu was a mercenary, so he was very sensitive. This bridge seems to be covered in traps. If we take a wrong step, it will be unimaginable. That's right, we can't trigger any traps. Chu Tian carefully looked at the stone floor for a few minutes. It's a good thing the runes on the stone floor don't change, so as long as you follow me, you can safely cross the stone bridge. Yun Yao looked over. There were exquisite crystal runes on the floor, but with her knowledge and abilities, she couldn't understand a single one of them. It was clear that this was the work of an ancient civilization. Chu Tian didn't dare say he could solve all of them, but it was more than enough to identify the traps. Pay attention, don't make a mistake. After Chu Tian said this, he stepped on the stone slab. The stone slab lit up, but Chu Tian turned a blind eye to it. He walked to the second stone slab, then the third, the fourth. The stone slabs that Chu Tian walked on all lit up, but there was no power that activated them. The 6 of them couldn't help secretly rejoicing. It was fortunate that he was following Chu Tian, otherwise it would have been hard for him to even take a single step in the trial space. The 6 of them memorized the route that Chu Tian had taken. Whichever stone slab Chu Tian stepped on, they would step on it. They did not encounter any danger along the way. Their speed also increased from slow to fast, and finally became faster and faster. In less than half an hour, they had safely moved half of the stone slabs. Something that no one could have imagined happened. Buzz buzz buzz. The sound of wings flapping at high speed suddenly came from all directions. Around the stone bridge, in the endless void, giant monsters over 3 meters tall appeared one after another. These monsters were black and yellow in color and looked like insects. Not only did they have sickle-like curved claws, but there was also a pitch-black stinger behind their huge abdomens. There were too many of them. There were more than 100 of them. Yun Xiao gave a pitiful cry, "Fuck. I finally understand why this place is called the Giant Hive. So this is the place where the fucking giants keep bees. We've entered a hornet's nest by mistake. What should we do now?" Nangong Yun slapped his head, "Stop howling. Don't you feel ashamed? Aren't they just a few insects?" Yun Xiao gave an exaggerated shout, "Insects? Please, elder sister, you say it so easily, but what kind of insects are these? You've seen several hundred gene insects before. Ever since we came to this labyrinth, we've all turned into insects." Everyone had a bitter look on their faces. The giant bees did not seem like they were easy to deal with. Not to mention that the stone bridge was covered in traps, so they could not use them at all. In this kind of situation, defending against the attacks of the giant bees was harder than ascending to the heavens. Yun Yao quickly raised her hands and the thunder spirit bead began to revolve around her. An ear-piercing sound rang out. Countless giant bees were like bombers flying towards their prey in the center of the stone bridge. "Kill them." Chu Tian's sword chi slashed at a giant bee and cut it in half. When he saw that the giant bee was not as strong as he imagined, Chu Tian let out a sigh of relief. Who would have thought that the two halves of the giant bee's corpse would fall onto the stone bridge, landing on a stone slab about 10 feet away. Hong! The trap had been activated. A bolt of lightning soared into the sky and instantly turned the giant bee's corpse to ashes. That's right, it turned to ashes and was blown away by the wind. The crystal floor was as smooth as new, without a single bit of residue left. The other half of the corpse fell down and also fell onto a restriction. A layer of energy was released and the other half of the corpse turned to stone before turning to dust. Too terrifying. The entire bridge was a death trap. Under the attack of the giant bees, if they were careless and made a single mistake, they would be instantly killed by the trap. The thunder spirit bead flew high into the sky and released a giant lightning net, instantly covering the 7 of them. When the giant bees hit the lightning net, they were instantly electrocuted and had no way of attacking. "My spirit energy is limited, with such a large barrier, I can't keep it up for long." Yun Yao knit her brows and shouted, "Quickly destroy them, don't let them get close, otherwise we'll all be finished." Wind and Cloud Sword Song. In this kind of crisis, it was time for Feng Kaidai to play her role. She was a wind-attributed cultivator, with a long range and fast attack speed. Moreover, the Wind and Cloud Sword Song was very concentrated, so when it came to dealing with a large group of monsters, she was the best choice. Countless blue sword chi rushed out like a wave and the giant bees were cut down one by one. However, this did not effectively eliminate the danger. The giant bees were too far away. Other than Feng Kaidai, it was very difficult for the others to effectively attack the giant bees. The number of giant bees was also far higher than they had expected. When they gathered around the stone bridge, they slowed down their advance. Rows of pitch-black tail needles stood on end. Each needle was covered in a dark green glow, which was the color of poison. Yun Xiao wiped his sweat, "Don't be like this." Su, 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 su. Hundreds of bee needles, just like a dense rain, wildly shot at the stone bridge. Each needle's speed was subsonic and could not be seen with the naked eye, it was just a dense mass of black shadows. There was a popping sound around the lightning net. This was the sound of the bee needles exploding after being hit by the lightning. Yun Yao's face became uglier and uglier. "This is bad, there are too many poison needles. My lightning is not a physical defense, it can't block this many high-frequency attacks." The lightning and flames were not physical. So when it was used to form a defense, it was not as strong as metal, earth, or ice. When each needle fell on the lightning net, the lightning would gather its power and explode it. This process consumed a lot of energy and it had to be replenished after each defense. Under this kind of dense attack, the lightning net could not withstand it at all. Finally a poison needle pierced through the lightning net and fell on everyone. Ice Mountain Shield. Feng Han's body released a white aura that condensed into a giant shield. The poison needles fell on the shield and pierced deep into it, but they were not able to tear it apart. Go! Feng Han sent the giant shield flying through the rain of needles. Ice explosion. The giant shield suddenly exploded and countless ice shards flew in all directions. Quite a few of the giant bees did not have time to dodge and were hit by the ice shards, falling down from the sky. However, it was not strong enough. Feng Han's cultivation base was not high, so he could not deal too much damage. Another batch of poison needles flew out from another direction. Everyone quickly put up their defenses. One of the poison needles fell down and stabbed into a nearby floor. The crystal floor was immediately activated, and a green poisonous substance was released from the restriction. Like a cloud, it instantly enveloped everyone. Everyone's faces fell. Damn it! These stingers could also activate the restriction on the floor. Not only did they have to make sure they were not hit by the stingers, they also had to make sure the stingers did not fall nearby and activate the terrifying traps and restrictions. Absorb. Lin Mu summoned the willow tree source spirit. After a long time of recovery, most of the willow tree source spirit's vitality had been restored. Several willow branches reached into the poison trap and quickly absorbed all of the poison. Chu Tian shouted when he saw this, "Don't defend. Attack with all your might. Destroy them." If they kept fighting like this, it was only a matter of time before they lost. They might as well not defend and fight with their backs to the wall. They would use the fastest speed to destroy these damn giant bees. That's what I was thinking. Thunderbird. Yun Yao's hands came back and the thunder net gathered together. It was added to the thunder spirit bead and turned into a 7-8 meter long giant bird that charged at the giant bees. Under Yun Yao's attack, Feng Kadi's several dozen sword chi followed. Although the others did not have strong long-range attacks, they still did their best to defend. Yun Yao was truly worthy of being an illustrious soul realm cultivator. Wherever the thunder bird went, the giant bees were swept away. In just a short while, they had killed several dozen of them. Good! Nangong Yun loudly cheered. With this speed, it wouldn't take long for the giant bees to be completely wiped out. But at this time, suddenly, another pitch-black wasp appeared. This wasp was clearly different from the others. Its entire body shone with a metallic luster, and it was like a meteor as it launched a sneak attack on the group. Its sickle-like forelimbs slashed down, and a sword chi-like energy swept towards the stone bridge. This is bad. If this attack came, it would trigger at least 5-6 traps. Moreover, it was very close to everyone, so who knew what would happen? Nangong Yun quickly sent out a fist. Pang! The red spirit energy shattered the sword chi and hit the giant bee at the same time. Nangong Yun was pushed back several steps and her feet stepped on the edge of the safe ground. Another centimeter. Then she would step on the other stone slab. Nangong Yun broke out in a cold sweat. She had thought that she had safely escaped, but the giant bee that had been pushed back raised its tail and shot out a jet-black poisonous stinger. Nangong Yun subconsciously dodged and the stinger hit the stone slab with the trap. Countless runes lit up. This is bad. A surge of energy surged out. Yun Shao wanted to pull her back. Move! Nangong Yun loudly shouted, but it was too late. A shockwave exploded out. Nangong Yun, Yun Shao, and Feng Kaidai were the closest, so they were the first to be hit. They were sent flying 4-5 feet away from the stone bridge and fell into the bottomless abyss. Several giant bees suddenly chased after them. They grabbed the injured people and turned to head into the bottomless abyss. Fuck, save me. Yun Zhao's pitiful cry disappeared into the darkness. The other giant bees saw that they had suffered heavy losses and could not break through, so they all retreated. Damn! Yun Yao knit her brows as she looked over the ruined stone bridge. Her eyes filled with rage as she clenched her fists. The three of them fell off the bridge and were taken away by the giant bees. It seems like they're dead for sure. Lin Mu and Fang Han's hearts were filled with fear. This kind of trial is impossible to complete. It was too harsh. This bridge was not something a normal person could cross. In the entire central state city, perhaps only Chu Tian's knowledge could see through the traps. If anyone else met this stone bridge, they could only try their luck, and it was almost impossible for them to reach this place. Who would have thought that the trial space would not only involve a dangerous stone bridge, there would also be hundreds of monsters blocking them. This kind of difficulty was just too harsh. How many hours had passed? Nangong Yun and the others had already died. How long could the others last? It's still too early to make a conclusion. Chu Tian looked into the endless void and said, "These B-type demon beasts are the giant type. They won't immediately kill their prey and will lock it up in their nest. If we can catch up, perhaps we can catch up to the three of them." Nest? Lin Mu said with a bitter smile, "These several hundred giant bees are already hard to deal with. I'm afraid the nest won't be easy to break through." Fang Han nodded. The bees sent out to look for food should be the lowest level. Inside the nest, there should be a bee king or queen. With the current situation, not to mention reaching the nest, if they were attacked by the giant bees on the way, it would be a problem for them to safely pass through with their current strength. "I have a way. Bring a few giant bee corpses over." Lin Mu and Fang Han carefully found 2 complete giant bee corpses. This is a demon beast called the giant bee. Its senses are very low level and its intelligence is not high. Chu Tian said as he cut open the giant bee's body with his sword. He took out a yellow waxy liquid from inside that gave off a fragrant smell. This is called beeswax. If we apply this beeswax to our bodies, the giant bees won't attack us. Lin Mu and Fang Han revealed looks of admiration. They were mercenaries, but they knew nothing about this. On the other hand, Chu Tian once again displayed his knowledge. If they could successfully avoid a bee attack, they might not necessarily die in the giant bee's nest. They couldn't just leave the three of them alone, right? So even though they knew it was dangerous, they still had to go. Chapter 174. The giant bees were probably weaker than the laborers, so even though they had killed many giant bees, they did not gain any trial points. In other words, these monsters had no value at all. Going through the beehive as soon as possible was the best choice, but now that Nangong Yun and Feng Kaidai had been captured, Chu Tian couldn't just abandon them. Even if he knew it was very dangerous, he still had to go to the giant beehive. Chu Tian, Yun Yao, Lin Mu, and Fang Han were all covered in fresh beeswax. This kind of thing did not last long, so if they did not rescue them quickly enough, they would be in danger. Yun Yao was skeptical at first, but when she followed Chu Tian along the stone bridge, they met several giant bees. These giant bees were clearly flying nearby, but they did not have any interest in the 4 of them. She was finally convinced. Chu Tian was not only knowledgeable, but he was also proficient in miscellaneous knowledge. How old did he look? Even if he started studying in his mother's womb, it would not be enough. They found the hive. When Lin Mu and Fang Han looked over, their eyes almost popped out. The 2 of them were mercenaries. They traveled extensively and often took risks. It was common for them to venture deep into the nests of magical beasts to capture their young and retrieve their eggs. However, compared to this, their previous experiences as mercenaries were like children playing in the mud. At the end of the stone bridge was a cliff similar to the beginning. In front of them was a door to the giant's labyrinth. There were giant bees all around and the ground was covered in all kinds of secretions. The labyrinth door was halfway up the mountain. At the top of the cliff was a giant tumor-like object. It was dark gold in color and had a metallic texture. Thousands of hexagonal honeycombs were densely packed on the top of the mountain. It was like a magnificent, abstract, and eccentric building. How many giant bees were there? Yun Yao felt her scalp tingle. Ordinary bees built their nests on the roofs of trees, and their nests were all hanging down from the trees. These giant bees, on the other hand, directly occupied the mountain peak, hollowing it out and transforming it into a nest. "Hurry up, let's go." The three of them were in a daze. Chu Tian called out. "Saving people is one thing, but how?" Yun Yao had some misgivings. "Look at this beehive. There are thousands of hives, and I'm afraid there are thousands of internal paths. It's even more complicated than the giant's labyrinth. It'll be hard for us to lock onto where they've been taken. It would take too much time to get down. Let's not talk about whether they would still be alive. As time passes, the giant bees will continue to evolve and mutate." Whoosh! A white figure stood on Chu Tian's shoulder, proudly crossing his arms in front of his chest, as if saying, "Looks like it's my turn again." Yun Yao seemed to understand something. "Fox? This little guy doesn't have any other skills, but he does have some tracking skills. It shouldn't be a problem to find them." What did he mean by no problem? There must be no problem. The fox was very dissatisfied with the wording of its master and was about to protest when Chu Tian grabbed its tail and lifted it up. "Go." Master really didn't know his manners. This fox has not even discussed the conditions yet. The little fox had no other choice but to enter the beehive. The beehive was wet and there was secretion everywhere. There were pupae and young bees everywhere, and there was a strange smell in the air. It was a good thing the giant bees were big, so humans could pass through the places they passed through. The little fox also put a layer of beeswax on its body. While it sniffed, it walked through the complex beehive. The four of them followed behind the little fox. They met large amounts of giant bees on the way. Some of the hives were very big, with several hundred bees densely packed together. There wasn't even a place to stand. Just the density was enough to make one's scalp go numb. It was a good thing they had Chu Tian's method to avoid being attacked by these giant bees. Otherwise, with their strength, it would be strange if they weren't torn to pieces. The little fox suddenly called out a few times. Chu Tian revealed a look of joy. "We found it, let's go." The four of them entered a large beehive. This beehive seemed to be where the giant bees stored their food. The space was very big and they could smell a strange fragrance as soon as they entered. Lin Mu and Fang Han asked in a surprised voice, "What kind of smell is this? Why is it so fragrant?" This beehive was like an indoor swimming pool. There were several large pools and each pool was filled with a pale golden liquid. There were several strange worker bees busying themselves nearby, throwing various materials into the pools. This is the bees' brewing room. Normal beehives also have this kind of structure. The bees will collect pollen and place it in the brewing room to ferment, finally producing honey. Chu Tian said this and then his voice changed. "The giant bees are so big, so they definitely won't collect pollen. Rather they will capture all kinds of life forms, herbs, and elixirs. They will extract their life essence and spiritual energy, using a special method to ferment these things. This kind of spiritual supplement is the favorite ingredient of the giant tribe to make honey wine, so it's called giant honey." The little fox excitedly called out. He threw himself into the pool and drank the unbrewed honey in large gulps. Chu Tian's eyes flashed when he saw this. "It can't be. Could it be that this honey isn't created by the trial and is real spiritual honey?" The little fox's performance answered Chu Tian's question. There was a whirlpool on the surface of the honey pool and the honey in the pool quickly fell. In just a few seconds, it had been completely drunk. Yun Yao's eyes almost popped out. "It can't be. How did it do this?" This pool could be used as a human swimming pool and it was over 4-5 meters deep. It could be imagined how much honey there was inside. The little fox had drunk it all in less than a minute. How did it do this kind of thing? Chu Tian said to the three of them, "The giant bee's honey is a great supplement, comparable to a high-grade elixir. But these pools are only half-finished products and there are a lot of the giant bee's poisonous secretions inside. We can't drink it, so this fellow has it easy. Let's go, finding the person is more important. They found a beehive in the brewing room that seemed to be used to store materials. There were large amounts of elixirs inside, and in the center of these things, there were several fellows covered in a translucent gel that couldn't move. Found it. Chu Tian's netherworld sword was covered in blue and white flames. After looking at them for a while, the blue and white flames fell onto the gel and quickly dissolved it. Wah! Nangong Yun was finally free. This is so uncomfortable. What is this disgusting thing? Feng Kaidai was also in an unprecedented sorry state. She who always cared about her image was currently covered in a vicious gel. Yun Xiao shouted out in an exaggerated manner, I don't have any strength left. This is a secretion from the giant bee. It will slowly absorb the spirit energy in your body and turn it into a layer of sealing energy. You will slowly die in this layer and all your energy and essence will be absorbed into it. Finally it will be used by the giant bee to make honey. Boss is too loyal. I thought I was done for. Nangong Yun expressed her gratitude as she gave Chu Tian a large hug. Chu Tian did not have time to take advantage of this there is something important we need to do. Let's go. What? Kill the queen bee. Ah, kill the queen bee. Everyone's eyes popped out in shock. In this giant bee's nest, there were at least 100,000 giant bees. Killing the queen bee was just too crazy. Actually, I don't want to waste time here, but since I'm here, I can't miss it. Chu Tian revealed a mysterious expression, the best honey is with the queen bee, that thing is very beneficial to cultivation. Just drinking a few mouthfuls will see immediate results. It's this strong. The giant bee's honey is made from various elixirs and the essence of living beings. This trial space has existed for so many years and this honey has been stored for so many years. It is a top-quality 10,000-year-old honey that can greatly improve a person's foundation and even increase their lifespan. It's this good. Everyone was completely shocked. Yun Yao was moved. Her grandfather was already old and if she could bring back some 10,000-year-old honey, it would increase her grandfather's lifespan by several years. This would be a large benefit to the Yun family. She asked, will the queen bee be hard to deal with? If we are not prepared, we will definitely die. The queen bee specializes in spiritual attacks and we will be killed as soon as we get close. Then what do we do? You don't need to worry about the queen bee. I will leave a seal on your bodies that will weaken your spiritual fluctuations. This way, the queen bee's main target will be me. Nangong Yun said, how can we do that? I should be the one taking the risk. You are everyone's leader, everyone is counting on you to lead the team. Relax, it's a spiritual attack. It really can't do anything to me. Otherwise, if I didn't have any confidence, I wouldn't dare take this risk. Everyone's faces were filled with question marks. Yun Yao and Feng Katie's hearts skipped a beat. They remembered a detail. In the Central State City Great Games, Yi Hen had used a spiritual attack on Chu Tian, but it was Yi Hen who was defeated. Could it be that Chu Tian had some kind of unknown talent that could reflect spiritual attacks? I'll deal with the queen bee, but that doesn't mean you can just watch the show. Chu Tian said with a serious expression, the queen bee must have a king bee protecting her. The queen bee can only use spiritual attacks, but the king bee is the opposite. The king bee's battle strength and defense are very high, so it is very hard to deal with. When I fight with the queen bee, you must help me stall the king bee, otherwise everything will be for naught. Alright. Even the biggest monster, the queen bee, has been dealt with by you, so what does a trivial king bee matter? When the seven of them finished their discussion, the little fox had a round belly. It was like a balloon that was filled with air as it lay on the ground, gasping for air. Nangong Yun said in a surprised voice, what's wrong with it? Chu Tian rolled his eyes, what else can it do? It ate too much. However, it was strange. This was the first time he had seen this little fellow eat its fill. Yun Yao, Lin Mu, and Fang Han all had looks of amazement. The entire beehive's several pools of honey had actually been drunk by this fox in one go. This was made from the essence of countless beings and elixirs, so each drop was very valuable. Just how strong was this energy? Even an expert on the level of Shen Feng Ho would not be able to withstand even a tenth of it. This little fox had drunk it all, and it had only eaten its fill. Monster. This master and pet were both monsters. Chapter 175. Stop pretending to be dead. Chu Tian grabbed the little fellow's tail. Find the queen bee's position. The little fellow let out a burp. That round belly was like a balloon that deflated, instantly deflating. It jumped up like a carp and its two sparkling eyes released a glow. It was like when it heard the queen bee's name, it thought of something delicious. Damn master! Since it was born, it had never had a full meal. Was it easy to fill its stomach for the first time? It did not even have time to think about it before its master said it was hungry again. Chu Tian rubbed his chin and his eyes revealed a trace of surprise. The little fellow seemed to have grown a bit fatter. The little fox had indeed grown a bit fatter. The amount of energy it drank was enough to make a true soul realm expert explode 10-8 times. So, even with the little fox's appetite, it was still a bit hard to eat. It seemed like this trial was very beneficial to the little fox. Chu Tian did not want to waste any time. This was because what attracted people to the trial space was not the fortuitous encounters and treasures. This was because after Chu Tian created miracle commerce, he had more money in his hands and normal treasures were not hard to obtain. The trial tower's ultimate hidden treasure, the ancient unsolvable question, as well as the secret to surpassing life and death was not normal, so it attracted Chu Tian even more. The queen bee. Since it was on the way, he might as well take care of it. As long as he did not waste too much time, Chu Tian did not mind taking some benefits. After the little fox was thrown to the ground, it immediately locked onto a direction and brought the 7 of them to quickly rush over. The little fox was clearly more agile than before. It moved several dozen meters in an instant, using its strange movement technique. There was only a gray mist in the air and it appeared several hundred meters away. In this kind of situation, even if Chu Tian opened his mind's eye, he could not catch the little fellow's movements. Because it was too fast. With the little fox's current escaping ability, even if it met an expert like Chu Xinghe, it could at least escape unscathed. No matter what the little fellow's battle strength was, just its speed and agility was enough for it to complete its scouting mission. The structure of the beehive was extremely complex, even more so than the giant's labyrinth itself. Chu Tian's map couldn't possibly be so detailed as to mark the location of the giant hive. In fact, the giant hive itself was a hidden map. If one didn't come to this place, the map wouldn't even show it. Since it was a hidden map, there should be hidden rewards. Where is this? They're all big worm eggs, so disgusting. When they walked into the new hive, everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. The walls and floor of the entire hive were densely covered with white eggs, and there were over 10,000 of them. Every single egg was the size of a human head, smooth, round, and pure white like jade, and the outline of the larvae could be faintly seen. Right in front of them was an incomparably large insect cultivation pond. Thousands of white and fat large insects were rolling around in it. Each of the larvae was about the size of a human baby, and they emitted a series of sharp squeaking sounds that made one's scalp go numb. The surroundings were filled with busy worker bees, seemingly feeding immature larvae. The giant bee larvae are also very dangerous. These insects have a very strong energy inside them, so they can explode. It doesn't matter if it's just a few, but if hundreds or thousands of larvae explode together, the power will be very impressive. So we should try not to touch them. After the larva hive, it should be the queen bee's position. The little fox went down another floor and arrived at a completely different place. This was the lowest level of the hive. Compared to the first few layers that extended in all directions, the space at the lowest level was very spacious. Also, there was no sticky secretion like the other hives. On the contrary, it was clean and tidy, as if it was made of an extremely hard dark gold wax. Even a normal weapon wouldn't be able to leave a mark on it. It was just like a mysterious underground palace. At the very front of the queen bee's hall, there was a high platform made from beeswax. It was shaped like a flower and there was a giant white and fat queen bee lying on it, as if it was sleeping. Two mountain-like behemoths stood at the side. Their entire bodies were pitch black, as if they were forged from refined iron. They gave off an invulnerable metallic feeling. They were more than 6 meters tall, and their bodies were sturdy and sturdy. Their 4 sickle-like blades were emitting a faint, cold light. 2 queen bees. The 2 largest guardian bees were naturally the so-called queen bees. In addition to the 2 bee queen-level guard bees, there were dozens of strong male bees in the hall. These ordinary guard bees were actually miniature versions of the bee queen. But even though they were miniature, they were still more than 4 meters tall, much larger than a human. These male bees were the most loyal guards of the queen bee. Especially the 2 queen bee existences, even the illustrious soul realm Yunya was not their match. Like this, it was much harder to kill the queen bee. The queen bee hasn't discovered our invasion yet. Chu Tian ordered, first seal the entrance. Lin Mu nodded and pressed both of his hands on the ground. Cyan-colored elemental energy bloomed, and a layer of tree roots pierced through the solid beeswax floor. Slowly, the roots grew and intertwined with each other, finally blocking the entrance. Feng Han's hands released a cold current that fell onto the thick wall of tree roots. On top of the original foundation, he added a layer of strong ice-attributed energy. If a normal worker bee touched it, they would instantly be frozen. Let's go. Everyone prepared to move forward. The surrounding guard bees were immediately alerted and they all flapped their wings to surround them. The giant bees had very low intelligence and did not have the ability to think, so they mostly relied on instinct. When they felt the beeswax aura on their bodies, they did not immediately attack, but rather they released a signal of danger. They were probably saying, "This is a forbidden area, you are not allowed to come near, otherwise you will be killed." The thunder spirit bead flew into the air and a strong thunder energy gathered in the bead, shooting out like a marble. The queen bee felt the energy fluctuation and immediately woke up. An invisible and strong spiritual energy fluctuation suddenly spread out in all directions, sweeping over the 7 of them. Gee! A sharp alarm sounded. The 2 queen bee immediately guarded the queen bee. The bee guards all revealed their hostility. Their sickle-like blades shone with a murderous aura as they prepared to set up an impenetrable defense formation. The strong energy from the thunder spirit bead had already arrived. It was like a super elastic ball as it bounced around the guard bees. It looked like a powerful chain of lightning as it instantly attacked the several guard bees, blowing them all to pieces. Kill! Nangong Yun brought Yun Xiao, Lin Mu, and Feng Han to the front. Feng Kaidai was responsible for summoning several dozen sword chi to protect them from afar. The guard bees were stronger than the giant laborers. But when they finally reacted, several of them had already been killed. Even if they did not fear death, with this small number, they could not stop everyone. The surroundings were filled with noise. The queen bee was controlling the swarm of bees to come to his rescue, so the hundreds and thousands of giant bees would soon charge in. This was also the reason why Chu Tian had sealed the entrance, but this was only a temporary measure, it wouldn't stop them for long. Only by taking care of the queen bee would he be able to completely eliminate the threat. Flickering flame slash. Several crisscrossing sword glows flew through the air. Several guard bees were cut in half as they fell to the ground. The guard bees saw that they had been completely annihilated and a terrifying killing intent filled the area. The 2 silent queen bee jumped out and like black lightning, they flew across the ground at a speed hard to see with the naked eye. Those dangerous sides released a cold glow as they slashed at Chu Tian from different angles. Too fast. Their killing intent was very strong. If he was hit by the queen bee, his starlight immortal body would be useless and he would be cut into pieces. Chu Tian did not dare to easily block it. He immediately used his mind's eye to find a flaw, and using his hyperfocus ability, he slid forward. The blade brushed past him. There were several deep blade marks on the ground that were still releasing black smoke. The queen bee's weapon was poisonous. The two queen bee quickly turned around in the air. Their four sides opened and a large amount of blade chi fell down like a wild storm. Yun Xiao had only blocked a single blade chi when he was forced back several steps. This queen bee actually knows a fucking overbearing blade art. Block them. I'll kill the queen bee. Chu Tian's body was covered in starlight as he raised his treasure sword that was covered in blue flames. He ignored the queen bee and charged at the queen bee. The air in front of him slightly twisted. An invisible energy was released. It was spiritual energy. The queen bee had used her spiritual energy and turned it into pure energy. This energy was hard to see with the naked eye and could only be seen with the mind's eye. The queen bee was trying to use her spiritual energy to block Chu Tian from a safe area or to kill Chu Tian from a safe area. Chu Tian dodged the spiritual energy wave. The netherworld sword began to gather flames. The queen bee seemed to have realized that the mind's eye could see through invisible spiritual energy, so she simply changed her attack method. Another wave of spiritual energy exploded, but this time it did not turn into an energy wave. Instead, it gathered into densely packed needles that shot out like raindrops. Then it condensed several dozen invisible energy blades. Ta, 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 ta. A strange popping sound rang out. The beeswax floor that was as hard as steel suddenly began to crack. It looked like it was splitting open by itself. Shwa. Then several large cracks began to appear. Each one was several dozen meters long and it was like it had been cut by a sharp sword chi. This was the mark of being cut by an energy blade. Everyone felt their hairs stand on end. Because there was no warning at all. There was no sound of breaking through the air or any change in energy, it was like it had appeared out of thin air. Was this a type of attack formed from spiritual energy? Compared to the terrifying spiritual energy of the queen bee, Yi Hen's power was just like a firefly's flame. Everyone was worried for Chu Tian. The queen bee was not an easy opponent. Could he really defeat the queen bee? So, a spiritual energy needle fell onto Chu Tian's chest. The starlight immortal body suddenly exploded and countless specks of light scattered like fireflies, but they did not disappear. The moment they exploded, they quickly gathered together, forming a blade of starlight that quickly stabbed at Chu Tian. This was mind energy. The queen bee had a strong spiritual energy, but it did not have a strong enough consciousness, so it could not form a divine sense. But even like this, spiritual energy turning into mind energy was still very terrifying. Mind energy was a kind of spiritual energy that could control matter. In theory, mind energy could control all matter. Mind energy attacks were invisible and invisible, being shot out with spiritual energy. No matter what matter it was, once the mind energy entered it, it would immediately be controlled by the queen bee's mind. This was why after Chu Tian's starlight immortal body was shattered, the starlight energy did not scatter and instead gathered together to attack again. This was because when the spiritual energy needle stabbed into the starlight immortal body, the queen bee had infused mind energy into Chu Tian's protective starlight. Then it forcefully controlled this layer of defense and peeled off a large piece of skin. Chu Tian did not even have time to stabilize himself before the ground around him began to tremble. His mind's eye swept out. He was shocked. This is bad. The surroundings were filled with the mind energy of the queen bee. Chu Tian was not afraid of spiritual energy attacks, but he never would have thought that the queen bee would not attack him directly. Rather it would transform the spiritual energy into mind energy and use this kind of spiritual energy to control matter, indirectly attacking him. This queen bee's strength was much higher than what Chu Tian had expected. If it was like this, Chu Tian had no other way. Chapter 176. The mind energy was like a storm and most of the attacks missed. Wherever the queen insect attacked, it was filled with mind energy. Perhaps the queen insect did not expect to use its mind energy to kill Chu Tian. The main hall was made of a special kind of beeswax, 1,000-year-old beeswax that was as hard as iron. This material was very special, so it could preserve the queen insect's mind energy for a long time. This meant that once the queen insect's power was released, everything in the main hall would become the queen insect's weapon, shield, and could be used as she pleased. This place had become its domain. In an instant, the 1,000-year-old beeswax that was as hard as iron instantly liquefied. The sticky beeswax was like a wave as it fell down on Chu Tian's body. This attack was about to hit Chu Tian. Chu Tian was instantly turned into a statue by the solidified beeswax. Chu Tianyan's mind's eye had long since seen through the energy changes, and he immediately escaped from the dangerous area. However, he didn't even have time to stand firm when on the originally flat ground, several hundred sharp thorns suddenly rose up from the ground. As hard as iron. As sharp as needles. With Chu Tian as the center, everything within a few meters had turned into a forest of spikes. When each spike rose from the ground, it was like the branches of a tree, splitting into even more spikes. The mind's eye was a kind of divine sense. Divine sense was limited and the mind's eye's ability to see was limited. The thorns had exploded too suddenly and the speed at which they split was too fast. Chu Tian could not completely see through this sudden attack, so he could only try to avoid being hit in the vitals and try to pass through the forest of thorns. Who would have thought that a series of snapping sounds would ring out? Several hundred thorns flew out and it was like a large rain of needles falling onto Chu Tian's body. All of this happened in a short period of time. Those thorns that were harder than iron, with the help of the queen insect's mind energy, it was enough to pierce through an awakened soul cultivator's protective spirit energy. When Chu Tian's back was pierced by dozens of spikes, the spikes immediately softened, turning into sinister leeches, crazily wriggling as they drilled into his wounds. This is bad. The spikes were filled with the queen insect's telekinesis. The queen insect could easily control its shape, harden and liquefy at any time. The moment it hit Chu Tian, the queen insect would control the wax to liquefy and pour it into Chu Tian's meridians, instantly sealing Chu Tian from the inside out, turning him into a wax man. This way, he would definitely die. He could only give it his all. Raging flame cut. At the critical moment. The Netherworld sword had already reached its peak. The Netherworld ghost flame suddenly rose up and covered his body, cutting off the beeswax that was close to his body. It seeped into his body through his pores, directly burning away the beeswax that had entered his body. This method would also cause considerable damage to the user's body. Chu Tian didn't care that much. The moment the crisis was over, he didn't wait for the queen insect's next attack. Chu Tian disappeared into the forest of spikes and a giant burning sword glow slashed through the spikes with an unstoppable force as it stabbed towards the palace. Boom! A large ball of liquefied beeswax rose into the air and condensed into a shield. The burning sword light flashed. The giant shield was directly cut in half. The smooth cut still had a blue flame burning on it. The burning sword light's might did not decrease at all as it moved forward at an indiscernible speed, slashing at the queen bug in the main hall. The queen bug did not have any close combat abilities, so Chu Tian's sure kill sword was getting closer and closer to the queen bug. At this time, Chu Tian escaped the range of the queen bug's telekinesis, but entered the range of the queen bug's spiritual energy. It was like a needle stabbing into his brain, causing him to feel a tearing pain. Chu Tian's eyes turned black. The entire world fell into darkness. When he came back to his senses, the queen bee and the others had already disappeared. Chu Tian appeared in a giant space with tens of thousands of guard bees surrounding him. They were all flapping their wings, with 4 glowing sickles in their hands. Stupid intruder! A cold and cruel voice suddenly echoed between heaven and earth. Do you think that with your weak strength, you can threaten this king's life? It had huge wings that were as thin as a cicada's, but it had a body that was similar to a human's. However, its entire head was that of an ugly and repulsive insect. Its body was more than 10 meters tall, and it stood in the middle of countless guard bees like an indomitable king. Chu Tian's lips curled into a smile. You're finally starting a spiritual battle. Weak spiritual energy, this king killing you is as easy as turning my hand. The queen bee did not have any close combat abilities, but it was an expert in spiritual attacks. It could control the entire beehive and send orders to the 100,000 giant bees, so its spiritual energy was naturally strong. This spiritual domain was several dozen times stronger than Yi Hen's. Even a true soul realm expert would find it hard to resist the queen bee's terrifying spiritual energy. Accept your death. The tens of thousands of guard bees charged at Chu Tian. Your spiritual energy is indeed strong, but in my eyes, it's just a giant ball of cotton. Chu Tian's hands came together and he coldly said, I am just a small flame. An ancient and dignified aura was released. It was like a layer of black smoke soaring into the sky, instantly forming the outline of a demon god. The countless guard bees slammed into Chu Tian and they all gave pitiful cries. Their bodies were swallowed by the black flames, finally turning into black fireballs floating in the air. The queen bee revealed a look of shock as she looked at the demon god. You're actually using your spiritual energy to ignite this king's spiritual energy. No, how is this possible? The black fireballs shot into the sky and suddenly exploded. Countless sparks scattered like fireworks. Countless guard bees were touched by the spiritual flames, and all of them screamed miserably. In the end, they turned into fireballs and exploded once again. Finally, the tens of thousands of guard bees turned into tens of thousands of fireballs. If you didn't come into direct spiritual contact with me, you would have a large chance of winning. However, from the moment our spiritual energy collided, your defeat was already decided. Now, let me give you a beautiful funeral. Chu Tian gave a laugh and his hands formed several seals, demon flame funeral. The queen bee gave a pitiful cry as the countless fireballs seemed to be attracted by something. They all charged at the queen bee's body. The black flames swallowed the queen bee's body and turned it to ashes. The spiritual space collapsed and he returned to the beehive palace. The queen bee's corpse was lying in front of him with its head already cut off. This slash was not Chu Tian's true attack at all, it was just to lure the queen bee into making spiritual contact. So, it did not matter if this slash hit or not. Once the queen bee came into contact with Chu Tian's spiritual energy, its spiritual energy would be burned to ashes by the demon god. Even if it did not hit, it would still die. You've killed the queen bee. You have been awarded 20 trial points. Current trial points, 190. The number on the jade token continued to jump and instantly increased by 20 points. Chu Tian was puzzled. Was there a mistake? Such a powerful character was given 20 points, was it the same difficulty as opening a magic cube? It had to be known that the reason Chu Tian could beat it was because of his ability to restrain it. Otherwise, with the queen bee's spiritual energy, even a true soul realm expert would be killed. After losing the queen bee panicked and immediately tried to escape. Nangong Yun and Yunyao chased after it with all their strength. The two queen bees were killed and the 10 trial points were divided among them. Chu Tian looked around the queen bee's body and found something that looked like a golden brick. I found it. The golden brick thing was not light at all. There was a layer of golden liquid that had a fragrance that was very alluring. This is the 10,000-year-old spiritual honey. What level is this material? Level 2. Or level 3? It's still a level 2 material. But Chu Tian gently tossed the golden brick thing in the air. It is no longer an elixir, but has a bit of a holy nature. It is a half-step sacred treasure. A half-step sacred treasure. Everyone looked around the queen bee's body and saw that there were over 100 of these golden bricks. Nangong Yun, Yun Yao, and even Feng Kai Dai, who was used to seeing treasures, all had round eyes. God, we're rich this time. What was the price of a half-step sacred treasure level 2 material? That was several tens of millions of gold coins. It was not something that could be bought with money. Now it was good. Large pieces, all of these high-quality materials were neatly stacked in front of them. This was a shocking amount of wealth. How do we use this thing? Use your spirit energy to melt it and you can directly use it. Chu Tian threw the brick to Nangong Yun. This honey brick is very dense, it should be able to fill several large jars once it's melted. The first time you use this thing, it will increase your cultivation base by a lot, so everyone should give it a try. He did not finish. A series of crunching sounds entered his ears. When Chu Tian saw this, he was almost filled with rage. He saw the little fox hiding behind him without him knowing, holding a honey brick in its hand that had almost finished gnawing on it. Fuck! Chu Tian grabbed the little fox's tail and lifted it up. You bastard! You're stealing master's things again. Your butt is itchy, right? The little fox still had a small piece in its claws. It gently tossed it into its mouth and then made a face. Its expression seemed like it was saying, "Didn't master tell everyone to give it a try? This fox is helping you test if it's poisonous or not." Chu Tian's lungs almost exploded with rage. The little fox was still not satisfied. Isn't it just one piece? I haven't even tasted it yet. How about we try another piece? In your dreams. The little fox pointed at the jade token on its neck. It used its claws to draw a circle and then gently cut it. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. You're saying you'll exchange half of your trial points with me? The little fox nodded its head. Chu Tian rubbed his chin and thought about it for a few seconds. He felt that it was worth it. Alright, then I'll give you another piece. You have to eat it sparingly, there won't be any more in the future. The little fox happily held it. This time it did not wolf it down, rather it stuck out its tongue and licked it like it was eating a popsicle. It had an intoxicated expression. Feng Kai-dai held back her smile as she walked over. Brother Chu, forget it. Since there's so much, letting the fox eat 1 or 2 pieces isn't a problem. The little fox revealed a moved expression. A good person. This fox can only blame itself for not choosing a master. It actually chose a violent and stingy fellow. Chu Tian saw its expression and was filled with anger. Feng Kai-dai was also there, so he should have kicked it to Feng Kai-dai. If he had done this, then Shen Feng Ho would have already gone bankrupt from eating it. Everyone found a container and immediately drank the spiritual honey. Lin Mu, Fang Han, and Yun Xiao drank a quarter and felt the spiritual energy in their bodies become so strong that they couldn't handle it. They did not dare drink anymore and quickly sat down to meditate. Chu Tian, Nangong Yun, Feng Kai-dai, and Yun Yao all drank half. I'm about to break through. Nangong Yun excitedly gave a low roar. A flame soared into the sky. Her cultivation went from the peak second awakened soul layer to the triple awakened soul. Lin Mu and Fang Han also smoothly reached the triple awakened soul. Yun Xiao was the weakest, but he was still at the peak second awakened soul layer. Finally, Feng Kai-dai successfully broke through her bottleneck. The 4 peak second awakened soul layer cultivators had been reborn in an instant. Even Yun Yao, who was at the 4th awakened soul layer, felt her strength increase. It really was worthy of being a precious half-step sacred grade material. This was definitely a good thing. They had never seen an elixir with such an immediate effect. It wasn't that Feng Kai-dai and Yun Yao had never seen treasures of the same level, but they had never seen such an immediate effect. Chu Tian saw everyone's rapid progress and his heart was very satisfied with this item. It really wasn't a wasted risk. When Chu Tian was prepared to use it, he was surprised to find that the queen insect's corpse had disappeared and it had left behind a light blue crystal. Spiritual pearl. This was truly an unexpected and pleasant harvest. This kind of thing could only be found and not sought. It was a very rare item that could directly increase one's spiritual energy. Chu Tian melted the spiritual honey and the spiritual pearl together and drank it all in one gulp. A surge of spiritual energy suddenly surged through his body, almost bursting his meridians. Chu Tian did not dare be negligent. He immediately sat down and began to refine the spiritual energy. The energy in the 10,000-year-old bee honey was not just for show. When the large amount of spiritual energy was turned into spirit energy, Chu Tian's cultivation base broke through to the peak second awakened soul layer without any suspense. It was also at this time that the pure spiritual energy in the spiritual pearl was slowly being absorbed by Chu Tian. Chu Tian could clearly feel his spiritual energy wildly increasing. Finally it reached a critical point. An earth-shattering sound rang out. Chu Tian felt like a lamp had been lit in the depths of his sea of consciousness. An invisible light, with him as the center, broke through the limits of his body and soul, radiating in all directions. Nangong Yun said in a surprised voice, "This strength. Is it the mind's eye?" Yunyao shook her head with a serious expression, "No. Even the mind's eye is not this strong. It seems like he has broken through to a new realm." That's right. The queen insect's spiritual energy had been absorbed by Chu Tian. After fusing it with his consciousness, it had already formed a large amount of divine sense. Now, Chu Tian's divine sense had increased, it had already surpassed the hyperfocus and mind's eye realms. Now it had reached the third realm, the mind's lamp. What was the mind's lamp? The mind's lamp. The divine sense lamp. Once the mind's lamp was lit, it could illuminate all living beings. With a single thought, it could shatter the souls of ghosts and demons. The mind's lamp realm's divine sense not only covered a larger area, it also had a certain killing power. In southern Xia, there were only a few people that could open the mind's eye. Chu Tian had not only opened the mind's eye with a trivial early awakened soul realm cultivation, he had also lit the mind's lamp one step further. His divine sense was something that no one in southern Xia could compare to. Chapter 177. Chu Tian wanted to rest for a bit, but there were several explosions coming from above him. Several holes appeared in the ceiling. A large number of giant bee larvae that had turned scarlet fell down, suddenly exploding and sending out waves after waves of violent energy. It was as if the bombs of a bomber were constantly falling down. Chu Tian quickly shouted, "The beehive's self-destruct sequence has been activated, quickly go." Perhaps this was the beehive's self-control. Once the queen bee was killed, the larvae would explode, destroying the intruder and the beehive, ending in mutual destruction. Chu Tian quickly put away the 10,000-year-old spiritual honey and the group quickly left the main hall. The structure of the beehive was very complex, but it was a good thing the little fox was leading the way, allowing them to escape before the beehive completely collapsed. There were tens of thousands of giant bees flying in the sky. When they lost the queen bee's command, they became wild and began to kill each other, no longer distinguishing between friend and foe. This meant that their disguise had lost its effect and they were attacked as soon as they came out. Chu Tian spent a lot of effort to kill his way out, finally leaving this hidden map and returning to the giant's labyrinth. This was another palace. From the map, this place was called the puppet room. Because they had passed through a hidden map, they could save at least 3/4 of the journey. Everyone looked around. There was plenty of light and it was very bright. There were several large bronze-colored treasure chests in the corner, but when they entered the labyrinth palace, the first thing they saw was not the treasure chests, but rather a row of giants standing in the center of the main hall. These giants were different from the armored giant guards. They looked more delicate and small, but that was only relatively speaking. These giants were around 15 meters tall and their bodies were tightly packed. They were covered in large amounts of runes that sparkled with light, looking very eye-catching. Before one wave had even settled, another wave had risen. What did they encounter this time? Chu Tian carefully looked at these fellows. Although they were releasing a strong aura, there were no energy fluctuations. His eyes suddenly lit up. These aren't monsters from the trial space, there's something fishy about them. The 7 of them slowly approached the giant fellows. This result was not fake. These things did not react at all. Although they were enveloped in the light of treasures, they did not give off any sense of oppression or danger. It was as if they were inanimate objects that could not move. The 7 of them looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Nangong Yun's eyes swept around, and a hint of surprise flashed in her beautiful eyes. Who cares? There's a bronze chest here, give me the key. I want to open the treasure chest. A few large bronze chests were placed in the puppet chamber. It was made of plain yellow copper. It was rectangular in shape, about 2 to 3 meters long, and half the height of a person. It looked very simple and unadorned, as if it had been here for many years. Chu Tian went to study the motionless giant. Feng Kaidai, Yun Yao, and the others surrounded the treasure chest, all of them filled with anticipation and apprehension. Nangong Yun excitedly and nervously rubbed her hands together. She held 2 exquisite copper keys in her hands and gestured at the keyhole a few times. I'm going to open it. Open it. Yun Yao couldn't wait any longer. The moment the key was inserted into the keyhole, a suction force sucked the key in and automatically rotated once. The lines that spread around the keyhole lit up. Ka-cha! The bronze treasure chest had been opened. Nangong Yun forcefully pushed the chest open. This seemingly large chest was actually filled with gold, gems, and diamonds. It was dazzling and made people feel mysterious, but it was just normal jewelry. Although it was valuable to normal people, it was not enough to enter the eyes of these people. These valuable jewelry were just fillers. There were several real treasures that were placed on top of the pile. There were several thick jade slips and a golden ancient jade talisman. What is this? Nangong Yun picked up a jade slip and looked over it. It was filled with words that she could not understand. Was this an ancient cultivation technique? It didn't seem like it. There were many pictures inside that seemed like tools for dismemberment. Trial protection talisman. Nangong Yun saw that this talisman was different from the others. When she picked up the jade talisman, a spiritual energy filled her mind, allowing her to understand the use of this ancient talisman. The jade talisman could release a layer of defense at a critical moment. It could only be maintained for a short moment, but it could block an attack below the true soul realm. This was a life-saving item. Of course it was given to Chu Tian to use. These ancient books should be treasures from the trial space, so we need to find someone to translate them for us. Yun Yao explained, the jade talisman is a special item from the trial space, so it can't be taken out. Truly unlucky. There weren't any treasures like she had imagined. Nangong Yun opened another bronze treasure chest. What made Nangong Yun depressed was that she obtained several jade slips that she could not understand and they were similar to the previous ones. She obtained a new storage bag. As the name suggested, it could store the things obtained from the trial space, preventing her from carrying too many spoils of war. If this thing could be taken outside, it would be a priceless treasure, but it was a pity that it was a special item from the trial space. The jade talisman and the storage bag were items from the secret realm, created by the trial space. They were not real items, so they could not be taken outside. The rewards were too little. Who told the bronze treasure chest to be the lowest level treasure chest? This bronze key was obtained from defeating the laborers. In the giant's labyrinth, the laborers were the lowest level items. Other ancient language. Chu Tian looked at the jade slips. It's a bit like the ancient language. This language is very rare and there aren't many that have been passed down, so I can only understand a part of it. It's over. Chu Tian could only understand a part of it. Then what use did these jade slips have? This isn't a cultivation technique. Chu Tian looked over the jade slips filled with diagrams. This is an ancient mechanical technique manual. Although I can't decipher it, there is someone else who can. This thing is worthless to others, but it is not low to us. After we decipher it, it will be of great help to Tong Xiaoyu. There was only one person in southern Xia that could understand it. This person was not anyone else, it was the young Miss Meng Qingguo. As long as she used her heavenly book source spirit, no matter how ancient the language was, the young miss would be able to decipher it. I understand. Chu Tian was suddenly a bit excited. He pointed at the several dozen giant metal giants in front of him. These are mechanical puppets refined by the ancient race using their refining techniques. Is it useful? Of course. As long as we find a suitable method, we can control them. Their eyes lit up. The ancient giant puppets released an aura close to the true soul realm. If they could find a way to control them, would the giant guards still be a threat? Chu Tian did not know much about mechanical techniques. This was because the mechanical technique was the predecessor of the source energy machinery technique, so it had already been eliminated in the future. In that era, even the planar spaceships had been created, so only the peak source energy machinery technique could create these large and precise products. The mechanical technique was a kind of secret technique that combined source energy arrays, using refining techniques to refine puppets or tools. From a certain point of view, the technique of refining mechanical puppets was a branch of the art of refining. This really was an eye-opener. Chu Tian used his mind's eye to look inside the giant puppets. The giant puppets were indeed refined using refining techniques. Their bodies were made of very simple materials, and although they were very large, the structure was very simple. Around their chests, there was a strange glowing object. Chu Tian jumped in front of the giant puppet's chest and hit it twice, opening its chest. Wah! He's opened the giant's chest. Chu Tian found a round crystal heart that was quietly sitting in the giant's chest. It could be taken out. As soon as Chu Tian touched this thing, the jade trial token sent a message to his mind. You've obtained the giant puppet's heart. Activating the giant puppet will consume 20 trial points. Do you want to activate it? Damn it. This thing had to be tried out. With 20 trial points, he could exchange it for 7-8 elixirs when he left the trial. Chu Tian did not hesitate. Activate. On the jade trial token, the number that was glowing quickly decreased, dropping by 20 points. The white light was released and entered the puppet's heart in his hand. Pang! Chu Tian could clearly feel the crystal heart jump. The dark golden giant puppet was activated. Its eyes suddenly lit up, and the patterns all over its body lit up. A terrifying and powerful aura spread out. Too cool. It would be great if we could bring this thing out. A giant puppet's destructive might was close to the true soul realm. If they could bring it out, wouldn't they be able to sweep away the experts of Central State? But this was impossible. The materials needed to create this giant puppet was an astronomical figure, and it was impossible to create this many puppets in the trial space, so it had to be an illusion. Chu Tian said to the others, activating a puppet is worth 20 trial points. That much? They were all stunned. How could they have enough to activate this thing? I have trial points. Chu Tian said without any hesitation, I'll do it. Feng Kaidai felt bad. How many trial points would this cost? 100 points is enough to exchange for a sacred herb from the trial space. Sacred herb? Chu Tian was shocked. So trial points were worth this much. Chu Tian generously waved his hand. It doesn't matter, we still have enough time. I'll help you activate the puppet and you can help me earn back my points, right? With this big fellow, we won't be in such a sorry state. Saying it like this was reasonable. Chu Tian spent 120 trial points to activate 6 giant puppets. Like this, Chu Tian only had 50 points left, but Chu Tian did not care about this consumption. There was still a long time left in the trial space. Once the 7 of them had the giant puppets, their ability to survive would increase by a large amount. We've stayed here for another 20 minutes. According to the trial space's style, the longer we stay here, the more trouble we'll encounter. Let's not waste any more time and leave. Chu Tian looked at the map and studied the route first. After entering the secret puppet room, there are several routes and each route will have many forks. Only one of them will lead to the center of the giant's labyrinth. What's the center of the giant's labyrinth? Chu Tian looked at the map and said, from the markings on the map, the center of the labyrinth is called the giant's treasure room. It should be the trial tower's most important and secret place. The treasure room. Do you even need to ask? Now that Nangong Yun had obtained the giant puppets, of course she was filled with confidence. Just based on this name, we should go in. Alright, we'll choose the giant's treasure room. Chu Tian had originally come for the Central State Tower's treasure room, so he put the map away, but before we reach the giant's treasure room, we'll have to pass a place called the Craftsman's Palace. There's still quite a distance. Feng Kaidai felt a bit of a headache. Let's take advantage of the fact that the monsters aren't strong enough to kill our way in. That's right, the longer we delay, the stronger the monsters will become. At that time, even if we have the powerful puppets, we might not be able to stop them. The 7 of them each held a giant heart. These giant hearts could connect the user's senses to the puppet. As long as the distance did not exceed a certain limit, they could use their consciousness to control the puppet. It was very easy to control and they could use their thoughts to control the battle. This really was a great battle weapon. The 7 of them controlled the giant puppets to open a path in front of them. When they walked out of the puppet room into the labyrinth corridor, there was a large group of monsters in front of them. These monsters looked like knights. Every one of them wore thick and heavy armor and rode steel-clad warhorses. They held long lances in their hands and lined up in front of them in a row. There were quite a few of them. This was the posture of a charge. As expected, they had stayed in the puppet room for too long, and when they entered the corridor, a large group of monsters was already waiting for them. What are you afraid of? Kill your way in. When the large group of iron-armored knights charged forward, the 7 incomparably large puppet giants also charged forward. The iron-armored knights were around the illustrious Soul Realm. In other words, the battle strength of these knights should be around the same as the slave overseers, perhaps even a bit stronger. It was most likely because they had evolved once or twice. However, the giant puppet possessed a speed that didn't match its body size. The moment its pair of crimson fists swung out, a large number of runes containing the power of destruction appeared on its fists. With a single punch, 3 or 4 armored knights were blown into pieces. Dang! Dang, dang. The iron-armored knights were 4-5 meters tall. The thick and large spears slammed into the giant puppet's body, and the giant puppet's steel body was covered in defensive runes. The iron-armored knight's spears could only create a few small holes and could not cause any damage at all. Ha, ha. Yun Shao controlled the giant puppet and stepped in the middle of the iron-armored knights, instantly gaining 6-7 trial points. This is too refreshing. You guys also have a day like this. See if your grandfather doesn't trample you to death. The 7 giant puppets blocked the iron-armored knights in front of them. It was a completely one-sided battle. The 7 people's trial points continued to rise. Chapter 178. A single iron-armored knight was worth 2 trial points. As they swept through the area, they had killed at least 100 iron knights. Just the trial points alone was a large amount of 200 points, and Chu Tian had obtained over 50 points. In terms of total, they had earned back the cost of activating the puppets. The only regretful thing was that the iron knights did not drop too many spoils of war. Most of them were materials, rare metals, and etc. These things were very precious, but it was not impossible to buy them outside. If we continue at this speed, we'll all be rich. In theory, earning back 10 times the trial points isn't strange at all. Everyone was filled with excitement. But this was only in theory. The trial space's environment was constantly worsening. The current giant puppets could move around freely, but that did not mean that in 5 or 10 hours, they would be able to easily defeat a group of monsters. So, time was money. Where are the Iron Knights? Why are they all gone? This old lady hasn't fought to her heart's content yet. Everyone had a look of high morale. Killing one would earn 1 or 2 points, and killing a few would earn several elixirs. Where else could they find such a good thing? When everyone was prepared to go on a killing spree, they found that the Iron Knights they met on the road did not attack at all. Instead, when they saw the 7 of them, they immediately turned around and ran away. Everyone was forced to change from passively attacking to actively chasing after them. This greatly reduced their hunting efficiency. Chu Tian gave a sigh. The trial designer is not an idiot. They would not let people farm points endlessly, otherwise there would be no meaning to the trial. Let's go. Don't be greedy for the trial points, it's more important for us to go to the treasury. Yun Xiao and Nangong Yun gave a sigh. What bad luck. It was a bit of a pity. They had finally managed to control the giant puppet and valiantly wanted to vent their anger, but they found that there was a limit to killing monsters. How could they not be depressed? The giant's labyrinth was connected to a palace, and without a map, it was impossible for them to reach the main palace's treasury. With the giant puppet in hand, they could go on a killing spree in the side palace and obtain large amounts of trial points, but Chu Tian did not want to do this. Time was precious. Instead of wasting so much time in the side halls, it would be better to directly enter the main hall. With the trial space's design, the main hall would definitely be the place with the most treasures. Since that was the case, there was no need to waste time in the side halls. While he still had a decent amount of fighting strength, he could directly rush to the main hall. After all, 6 hours had passed since the trial started. Chu Tian brought the 6 of them to destroy many strange monsters. Just Chu Tian alone was able to obtain around 80 to 90 trial points, as well as a large amount of materials and spoils of war. There was an exit in front. They had arrived at the Craftsman Palace. When the brand new main hall appeared before their eyes, everyone was instantly shocked. This hall's scale was unprecedented, equivalent to 4 or 5 central state plazas put together. There were giant furnaces everywhere, and a group of 30-meter-tall giants were currently brandishing iron hammers to forge weapons and armor. The giant craftsmen were different from the giant guards. Their bodies were shorter than the giant guards by a large amount, and they did not wear any armor, revealing their black granite-like skin. Even their beards and hair were filled with a sturdy texture, looking like they were made of stone. Every single one of them was wearing shorts, and the bulging muscles on their bodies were like hills. The incomparably huge hammers in their hands were flickering with red runes, and they were constantly spewing hot air. Every time the hammers smashed down, the iron embryo would shine red, and at the same time, a large amount of sparks would fly. The entire hall was filled with giant blacksmiths. They had a fiery look on their faces. They're all giants. Yun Xiao muttered in his heart, "Boss, there seem to be a lot of them. Should we fight them?" Chu Tian estimated the distance with his eyes. This was a bit troublesome. The giant puppets were too flamboyant, so it was impossible for them to silently sneak in. So, they could not pass through the palace without killing over 100 giants. But was killing over 100 giants easy? He did not know how strong these giants were compared to the giant guards, but they were not weak no matter what. There's no other way. Chu Tian made his decision, we'll fight. This was the only way to the main palace, and there were no secret paths or paths to choose from. So, they had to fight this battle, but they needed to carefully think about how to fight. We'll lure the giants into the labyrinth and split them up. We'll reduce the pressure and then we'll defeat them one by one. Chu Tian quickly thought of a plan. Nangong, you're in charge of luring them out. We'll hide in the nearest fork and wait for orders. After Nangong leads a group of giants away, we'll go into the main palace and kill the rest. All right. Everyone prepared themselves. Nangong Yun controlled the puppet and rushed out of the passage, rushing towards the nearest giant who was forging a weapon. The giant had just raised its head. An iron fist slammed into its face. The runes on the puppet's iron fist began to glow. Hong! It was like a violent explosion as the giant fell to the ground. Go die! Nangong Yun raised the puppet's arms and wildly hammered it. Then she jumped up and stomped down twice. The giant did not even know what happened before its head exploded. You've killed the giant craftsman. You have obtained 5 trial points. Current trial points, 55. As soon as Nangong Yun smashed the giant's head, a prompt came from the trial jade token. Killing a giant would give her 5 trial points, but Nangong Yun was not too happy about it. This was because the more trial points she obtained, the more powerful the giant was. Intruders. Kill. Kill. The other giants angrily roared as they charged forward with their red-hot giant hammers. Mother! This scene was too terrifying. Imagine over 100 angry naked men charging forward, how could they not feel their blood run cold? If they were caught by these naked men, wouldn't the consequences be unimaginable? Nangong Yun hurriedly jumped onto the giant puppet's shoulder, and the giant puppet immediately ran into the tunnel. More than 100 hammer-wielding naked men chased after it. Their speed was much faster than the giant guards, but compared to the giant puppet, it was still slightly lacking. They're gone. Quickly. Hurry. Nangong Yun led away most of the giants, and Chu Tian's group of 6 returned to the passage, entering the craftsman's palace again. Chu Tian's plan was very good because with Nangong Yun's lead, most of the giants in the giant's palace had been taken away, leaving only a small half behind. Hurry! Kill them! Yes! Their blood began to boil as they charged forward. The giant craftsmen were very strong, and in terms of destructive power, they had reached the peak of the illustrious Soul Realm. Compared to the giant guards, they were still weaker. There were over 100 giants in the palace, but now that Nangong Yun had led away over 60 of them, Chu Tian's group of 6 had to deal with 5-6 each. Although it was a bit difficult, there was still hope. You shameless exhibitionists! Yun Shao charged forward with a roar, eat my fist first. Pang! The giant puppet's iron fist sent a giant craftsman flying. The others quickly followed suit. Before the other giants could come close, they had already killed 4-5 of them. Then they fell into a bitter battle. Dang! Feng Katie's puppet was hit by a hammer. That burning hammer slammed into the armor, creating a dent in Feng Katie's back. The surrounding area was burnt black. Damn! Although she knew that the giant puppet could not be brought out, seeing the giant puppet injured still made Feng Katie's heart ache. The giant craftsman's hammer was not only destructive, it also contained a strong fire-attributed energy. With a single strike of the hammer, normal steel would turn into molten iron. The 40 craftsmen were not weak, but compared to the giant puppets, they were still lacking. The most important thing was that the monsters created by the trial space were all fake. All the monsters here seemed to have a problem with their intelligence. So they did not know how to cooperate and only knew how to charge forward. How could they be a match for the 6 of them? The entire battle lasted less than 15 minutes. The 40 giants all fell down. Chu Tian had just let out a sigh of relief that he had solved the problem before Nangong Yun came back, when an angry roar suddenly came from the highest part of the hall. There's still one more. The 6 of them had just turned their heads. A blazing red hammer flew through the air. With a loud bang, it smashed into the head of Cloudy Sky's puppet. The entire head was smashed into pieces, and Cloudy Sky staggered and fell to the ground. Fuck! Which bastard hit my head off? Chu Tian did not have time to deal with this stupid fool because after the giant burning hammer spun in the air, it was as if it was attracted by a magnetic force. It quickly returned to the giant's hand. This giant craftsman was different from the others. The giant's skin was crimson and covered in cracks. What flowed through the cracks was actually red lava, as if it was the giant's blood. The air around him was warped by the scorching heat, and he looked like a huge human-shaped furnace. His beard, hair, and eyes were all red, as if they were spitting out tongues of fire. There was a strong aura that came from it. Lin Mu said in a surprised voice, "This seems like a leader." Fang Han snorted and said, "Who cares what it is, I don't believe that it can beat all 6 of us." Yun Shao crawled up from the ground. Most of the puppet's head had been smashed to pieces and the remaining half had melted. Luckily, the puppet did not have any weak points. As long as the controller was not hit, the puppet could still move. Destroy it! Destroy it! Yun Xiao shouted in exasperation. At this moment, the hall shook and Nangong Yun ran back in a very distressed manner. His body had been smashed by the hammer 4-5 times and there were many black dents on his body that were still smoking. Are you done yet? I can't hold on any longer. This is bad. When it rains, it pours. Chapter 179. This giant craftsman covered in flames was several times stronger than normal craftsmen, almost reaching the true soul realm. Moreover, he had a cultivation technique and a special martial art, so his battle strength could not be compared to before. You help Nangong Yun, I'll take care of the leader. The situation was very dangerous and they did not have time to waste. They immediately controlled the puppets to help Nangong Yun and block the other giant craftsmen. How could the burning giant let them go? As soon as they controlled the puppets to retreat, the giant charged forward with a loud roar. Chu Tian hid behind a pillar. The mind's lamp was lit and his divine sense was released. It was like an invisible but penetrating light. When one's divine sense reached the mind's lamp realm, not only did it have the ability to observe, it also had the ability to affect matter. The burning giant was covered by the mind's lamp, as if there was some kind of external force that had stopped him. The puppet took a step forward and charged forward. The burning giant was awakened and the war hammer quickly spun. It was covered in flames and it suddenly shot out like a bolt of red lightning. Chu Tian saw through the giant's attack and had the giant puppet dodge ahead of time. The giant hammer missed and slammed into its back, creating a long mark on the ground. The terrifying heat created a long ditch that was filled with molten rock. The puppet took the opportunity to leap up and launch an attack. The collision of the two incomparably large fellows was truly like a collision between two mountains. The giant was caught off guard and was pushed back 2 steps. The puppet's fists were like cannonballs as it fiercely hammered the giant's chest. When the 2 dark golden fists hit the burning giant's chest, the annihilation runes on the puppet's arms lit up and released a terrifying destructive might. The giant's chest caved in and the 30-meter-tall giant body was hit by a powerful shockwave, slamming into a pillar. Hong! The pillar collapsed with a loud rumble. This was a good chance for the puppet to chase, but the giant burning hammer spun in the air and slashed at Chu Tian's back. The mind's lamp's divine sense was stronger than the mind's eye. Although the mind's lamp was not as sharp as the mind's eye, its ability to control a large area far surpassed the mind's eye. Chu Tian felt the giant hammer fly back, but the body of the puppet was not his, after all, so it could not use the power of the microscopic to the extreme, nor could it wield the hammer freely like his own body. Chu Tian could only barely dodge to the side, and the giant hammer brushed past his shoulder, leaving behind a burn mark. The burning giant took the opportunity to stand up and catch the hammer with a bang. The hammer returned to his hand. The moment the hammer returned to its hand, its aura instantly increased by several times. That pair of eyes spewed out flames of anger as it charged forward with earth-shattering steps, smashing the puppet's head with its hammer. Chu Tian knew the power of this giant. If this hammer hit, the puppet giant would be completely crippled. Under Chu Tian's control, the puppet immediately retreated to avoid the heavy blow. The giant hammer swung down heavily from its chest, unexpectedly erupted with a scorching power that ignited the air. Like a fire dragon descending from the sky, it crashed headfirst into the sturdy floor. The puppet's legs turned soft and its body fell into the air. It fell into a large pool of burning red magma. The pure power of the giant's hammer wasn't much, but it could produce a terrifying energy wave that instantly melted a large area of the ground into liquid. It was a good thing the puppet was made of high-density metal. If it was a normal being with a flesh and blood body, even if it was a true soul realm expert, if they fell into a pool of several thousand degrees hot magma, they would instantly die. The puppet quickly flipped back and escaped from the pool of magma. Although it was made of high-density metal, staying in the magma for a long time would cause a large amount of damage to the puppet's body. If an important part of the puppet melted, the entire puppet would be crippled. The burning giant raised its hammer again and attacked Chu Tian's puppet again. Wherever the sledgehammer passed, the air was set ablaze. It was as if a giant was holding a flaming dragon in his hand and was crazily smashing it at a puppet giant. It hit the ground. It instantly created a large pool of magma. It hit the giant pillar. It instantly melted the giant pillar. Chu Tian, who was far away, could also feel the terrifying and scorching aura. If Chu Tian hadn't been using his divine sense to monitor the overall situation, using his well-practiced technique and minute subtlety to carefully control the puppet, he would have been defeated in just a few rounds. The burning giant swung its hammer once again, turning the ground into a large pool of magma. Enough! Chu Tian controlled the puppet to not retreat, but rather charge forward. It suddenly stepped on the giant's hammer, not letting the giant raise the hammer. The annihilation iron fist slammed into the giant's right shoulder. The giant's shoulder was shattered. Chu Tian controlled the puppet to raise its arm and then sent out a chop. With a terrifying cracking sound, the giant's right arm was cut off. He raised his leg and kicked out. The giant was sent flying again. How are you going to fight me without your hammer? Chu Tian controlled the puppet to pick up the severed arm and throw it far away. Stepping on the magma, he charged out of the pit and chased after the giant with a terrifying strength. The giant did not even have time to stand up before the puppet grabbed him and lifted him up, smashing him into another pillar. Having lost its right arm, it had lost its hammer. The giant's battle strength had plummeted. How could it still be Chu Tian's match in this situation? Roar, roar, roar. The burning giant roared 3 times. Its body was covered in flames and countless destructive runes were released from its body. Self-destruction. Chu Tian's divine sense was constantly checking the situation inside the giant's body. The giant was condensing its energy into a single point and adding in the runes that appeared. The giant knew that it could not win, so it chose to destroy itself. Chu Tian quickly controlled the puppet to turn around and pick up a broken pillar. It was like a giant stick that weighed several dozen tons. The mind's lamp was suddenly released. His divine sense covered everyone. A voice sounded in everyone's mind at the same time, "Get out of the way. This fellow is going to explode." The cracks on the burning giant's body became more and more serious. Large amounts of magma and flames began to spew out, almost ready to explode. "Fuck you." Chu Tian used the pillar as a stick to hit the giant's body. The 30-meter-tall giant was violently attacked and was like a ball being hit by a wooden stick as it flew towards a group of giant craftsmen. Nangong Yun controlled the puppet to kick the giant in the air. "Let me help you." This kick landed on the giant's abdomen and the giant was sent flying again, falling in the middle of the group of giant craftsmen. "Quickly run." Everyone threw themselves to the side and lay down. Hong. A destructive energy filled the hall and a sea of flames covered most of the hall. At least 30 giant craftsmen were blown to pieces. Killed the raging flame divine craftsman. You have been awarded 30 trial points. Killed the giant craftsman. You have been awarded 4 trial points. Killed the giant craftsman. You have been awarded 4 trial points. Chu Tian found that his trial points were slowly increasing and he had instantly obtained over 100 points. A giant craftsman should have been awarded 5 trial points, but because of Nangong Yun's kick, the trial tower had determined that Nangong Yun had contributed in killing the giants, so she was given 1 trial point to each giant craftsman. "This is great." Yun Xiao let out a loud cry. They had instantly killed most of the giants. Was there anything more satisfying than this? The entire craftsman palace, a divine craftsman giant and over 100 giant craftsmen, had actually been completely destroyed by 7 people. In terms of battle strength, the puppet was not much stronger than the giants, but it was still able to achieve this kind of glorious victory. This was not an easy matter at all. Clear out the Craftsman Palace. You have been awarded 30 trial points. Everyone received a reward at the same time. This was the extra trial points for killing the giants. Because of the trial tower's design, completely destroying the Craftsman Palace was an impossible task. If someone could actually complete this task, naturally they would receive extra trial points. Chu Tian had solved the cube puzzle at the beginning and obtained over 100 points, completing this impossible task. That was why the 7 of them had enough capital to activate all these giant puppets. It was because there were so many giant puppets and because they had set their goal from the beginning that they did not go to the other treasure halls and directly headed to the main hall. That was why they were able to reach the Craftsman Palace in the shortest amount of time. The giant craftsmen had not been strengthened enough. Otherwise, even if they had 7 giant puppets, they would not have been able to pass through here, not to mention clearing out the entire Craftsman Palace. There was no doubt about it. This was a glorious victory. Chu Tian looked at his trial points and found that he had over 284 points. This was almost enough to break the Central State City record. Even if Chu Tian was eliminated by the trial tower, he would still be the person with the highest trial points in history. Less than 8 hours had passed in the trial. Chu Tian stood up with a face covered in dust. The flames in the main hall gradually dissipated and the hot air seemed to be able to burn one's lungs. The battle had reached its peak. Is everyone all right? Nangong Yun stood up and her beautiful red hair stood up. Her beautiful face was also covered in black. Feng Kaidai, who paid attention to her image, also looked like a coal worker. We're still alive. Yun Xiao, Lin Mu, and Feng Han were together. Feng Han had condensed an ice wall that blocked the shockwave from the flames. Yun Yao did not need to worry at all. Her cultivation base was much higher than Chu Tian's, so the shockwave from the explosion was not enough to threaten her life. Although we're fine, but... Yun Yao knit her brows and said, our puppets have suffered quite a bit of damage and their battle strength has dropped. We haven't even reached the treasure room, so this loss is a bit big. The 7 puppets had suffered different degrees of damage, but their luck was not bad. At least no matter how heavy the damage was, they could still move and would not completely collapse. Who cares? Nangong Yun impatiently said, quickly take a look. What spoils of war are there? Yun Xiao also said, that's right. These giants are so strong, they should have left behind some spoils of war. Chu Tian walked over to the place where the divine craftsman had exploded. Chu Tian seemed to have discovered something and his eyes lit up. This fellow was hard to deal with, but he still left behind quite a few things. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.